All right. Franchise Flicks Podcast. It's always on. I don't want to listen to this. What are you talking about? Everybody likes franchise flicks. It's an American institution. I got one.
Intro music.
Starting the podcast.
Welcome to Franchise Flicks. My name is Ted, and joining me are my co-hosts, Andy and Zach. On this podcast, we task ourselves with watching movie franchises, breaking them down, and reviewing them, including franchises we've seen and love, as well as franchises we've never seen and frankly avoided. Today we're talking about the Santa Claus series, the franchise that could go on forever if the writers can come up with enough new rules for being Santa. This series includes the Santa Claus 2, and the Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause. So we usually like to start these episodes off with talking about our experience level prior to binging these series. So Andy, prior to preparing for this episode, have you ever seen the Santa Claus trilogy?
I think so. I'm trying to think of I actually watched 2 and 3 all the way through when they had come out. These movies for me were more of you put them on at Christmas and you don't necessarily sit down and watch them the whole way through, but they're on in the background while maybe you're baking cookies, you're wrapping presents, you're doing other Christmas related activities. So this was the first time actually sitting down, I think, to watch all 3 movies fully. But yeah, it was quite the ride through these 90s movies. Kind of remember things a little differently from when I was a kid and now being an adult. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, my wife is big into Christmas. If you've ever met her, you know she's basically Mrs. Claus. So she puts these movies on every holiday season a lot. So I've seen the Santa Claus trilogy, and it does kind of feel a little sacrilege to call it a trilogy. but I mean, that's what it is. Yeah, I've seen him a bunch. I'll be honest. The Santa Claus in particular is actually it's kind of a guilty pleasure for me, watching it every holiday season. I don't want to like it. But there's especially the first one. There's just a certain charm to it that is kind of alluring. As much as I want to not like Tim Allen, he's kind of got my brand of comedy in that first one. Ted, what about you?
Yeah. Well, very similar to yours, because your wife, Mrs. Claus, happens to be my wife's sister. So, it really is like living with Mrs. Claus's sister, essentially. I mean, we watch these every single year. Just a little bit about my wife. She ordered the Hallmark Channel this year to watch during Thanksgiving season and Christmas, and she's going to cancel it after New Year. That's how much she loves Christmas. She asked me to download a bunch of Christmas movies. Like, you name a Christmas movie, I've at least seen it in passing. But these ones are ones that I actually enjoy more than most, because they've got a little bit of adult humor, kind of like what Zach was alluding to, like the dad humor almost, like the Tim Allen brand of humor is very just dad jokey. And that gets me a lot. And yeah, I'd seen them when I was a kid, but I've seen them more in the last couple of years that I've known my wife than I've ever seen them in my life. And especially now in quarantine, this is not the first time that we've watched them through quarantine.
So you're on your third rewatch of the Santa Claus trilogy this year?
I think, well, for me, probably the second, but she probably has seen it at least 3 times during quarantine.
I mean, you got to give it time to settle in. So I get it. You got to watch and rewatch to really take in all the heady content.
Oh, absolutely. You miss so much if you're not paying attention. That's why you can't be baking cookies or sipping cocoa when you're watching these movies. You really have to pay attention. No, like any Christmas movie, for the most part, it's just something that makes you feel warm and fuzzy. And sometimes you catch on a joke and it gets you.
To the franchise's credit, I will say this. It is a nice, self-contained little universe. So you are very right in saying you put this on during Christmas. Yeah, you're joking when talking about you have to follow along and watch and all that to get everything. But at the same time, it's like you can either do that or you can do these other things. It's really meant to just be enjoyed during Christmas time. And I think that makes it a pretty good trilogy then.
Yeah. Kind of I alluded to it in the intro, but this franchise trilogy, as Zach doesn't want to call it, it has its own rules. Like, it has its own universe and rules to it. Like, that's the premise of these movies are the clauses, the rules. So yeah, that's the connecting thread here, but let's get into it. I'm going to read off the synopsis for the first one and we'll get into it and break it down. So, the Santa Claus 1. Scott Calvin, played by Tim Allen, is a classic 90s movie dad. He's divorced, consumed by his high-paying job, and doesn't spend enough time with his kid. I mean, that's pretty common in the 90s movies, for sure. On Christmas Eve, Scott and his son Charlie stumble upon somebody on their roof. After startling the man, he falls to his death. Scott and Charlie discover that the man was Santa Claus, and that the next person to put on his coat will become Santa. Scott, skeptical of this, puts the coat on because he's in just his underwear. The two proceed to the roof, hop in the sleigh, and deliver gifts for some reason. The reindeer transport them to the North Pole, where Scott learns that under the Santa Claus, he is now Santa Claus and has 11 months to get his affairs in order before taking the job. He wakes up the next morning thinking that it was all a dream, but Charlie believes it happened. Scott begins gaining weight and graying, transforming into Santa Claus. Charlie's mother, Laura, and her new husband, Neil, think that Scott is going too far, fueling Charlie's imagination, and that visitation rights stripped from him. Scott, now understanding that he's Santa Claus now, kidnaps Charlie, brings him to the North Pole. They deliver presents, but then Scott is arrested while delivering presents. The elves end up saving Scott and Charlie. Charlie is delivered back home. Suddenly, his mother and Neil believe Scott is Santa, and Scott gives Charlie a snow globe that can summon him whenever he needs him. That's pretty much it.
The way you just described that movie sounds like an absolute horror show.
Oh, I know. And I had a lot of fun writing these synopses because like it's very on point as to what this movie is. But yeah, it's like, what the fuck? When you break it down, what happened here? I mean, he straight up kidnaps his own son. By his son's choice, I guess, but he kidnaps his son because he does not have visitation rights, and he's lucky in that moment that his wife is even letting him in their house. I mean, to say goodbye.
Let's start from the beginning. Take the idea that it's Santa Claus on the roof out. Tim Allen killed a guy and put his coat on.
Yeah.
Like that in and of itself, if you just isolate it, is a crazy way to start off a story.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he was in his underwear, Zach. Come on.
Yeah, I get it, I guess.
It is really jarring to think like how this movie starts off is basically your classic 90s. Here's some business dude. Look at us in sales. And here we are. We're having a Christmas party. Like all these staples of a good 90s storytelling happening, whether it's TV or movies. And then all of a sudden we go right into murder of Santa Claus, which then drives this crazy convoluted plot all about believing in Christmas and Santa and all of that jazz. It's all about the belief in Santa, and we go through this crazy, magical, fucked up journey to get there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's funny that, like, I mean, you guys both hit on it already. Like this trope, especially in '90s movies, '90s family movies, where like the dad is just, he's got his sales job and he's just grumpy and he's got not really a good dad. It's like this exposition on the beginnings of late stage capitalism and what it does to families. Like it's so quintessential, like 90s culture at that time. It's so weird to see in a Santa Claus movie, in a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I can think of like 5 movies right off the top of my head that follow the same format, up until the point that Santa Claus is murdered, obviously.
That's fair.
But you know, I think of like Liar Liar. It's just amazing that this is such a tropey thing in
all
the
these
90s.
bad dad movies.
Yeah. I when I watched these movies as a kid, I almost like envied, like, I want 2 Christmases. I want divorced parents here. Like, not really.
That's what you
it's
got
just
out
like
of it.
it's just like, this is such a common trope. Why isn't this my life? This is really weird to me. To have a stable family, I guess. So
Yeah, I guess seeing just that, you would feel a little weird.
absolutely. Well, anyway, let's get off of that trope itself and just get through this movie. So yeah, Santa is murdered here. Well, not murdered. I guess it was accidental manslaughter, I guess. Either way, you put on the man's coat and you go along for the journey. That was my point in the synopsis. For some reason, they get into the sleigh and they deliver the presents, no questions asked, until they're delivered to the North Pole. The only thing I can think of is that off screen somewhere, Tim Allen playing Scott Calvin, the characters merged together, and he must have gone on some coke bender and thought this was really just a bad bender dream, and that he was just going along for the ride because he was just tripping out. I don't know.
Yeah, it becomes absolutely absurd the moment you take the idea of Santa Claus and what he does supposedly, or to the children that listen, does do, where like he has to deliver all the presents. So how does this man, now being Santa Claus, do all of that and not wake up the next day thinking like, what the actual fuck? Not even scared. He's just literally just waking up from a bad coke dream. And his son on the other hand is like, no, all of that shit's real. We really did that. And oh, by the way, now I'm excited about Santa. And then for the next several minutes, we'll just see sequences of Charlie doing all this crazy Santa Claus reindeer riding a sled related stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, that's kind of what reinvigorates his love and belief, or really his joy for the holiday. Right. We see Charlie kind of get this feeling back after spending a pretty shit Christmas with his dad. Christmas Eve, at least, where everything goes wrong. Christmas dinner he burns Christmas dinner. They go to the restaurant and they don't have chocolate milk. Like, what kind of restaurant doesn't have chocolate milk for a kid? I feel bad for him right there. But and then finally he gets something that he can look forward to. He gets something that he can look up to in his dad, and that's what connects them and drives the story going forward.
Yeah. So playing off of that, that's really what helps their relationship. In this 90s not great dad trope, being Santa Claus is what brings them together, makes Scott Calvin realize that family and making others feel joy are the most important things, and not doing well at your sales job and all this stuff and doing something that's fulfilling to you too. You know, the more he gets entrenched in being Santa, it's partially naturally because he's literally transforming into Santa, but you can tell as a person too, because Scott Calvin in the beginning of the movie, his like one redeeming quality is that he wants Charlie to believe in Santa. And that's despite the fact that his mother doesn't want him to, her husband Neil doesn't want him to. They all think he's too old, which, by the way, he looks pretty young in that movie. I definitely don't think he's too old to believe in Santa, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, they make... I just wanted to point out, like, they make it such a big deal that Charlie believes in Santa Claus. Like, it's pretty crazy how much of an emphasis they have on Charlie believes in Santa Claus, therefore he's losing his mind as a child. Like,
well, this is going to come up as a recurring theme throughout this trilogy, is this idea that Christmas was a traumatic experience for all these people. And that's like what it turns out, right? Like, why are they concerned about Charlie in Christmas? Well, because Neil never got his fucking weenie whistle, because the mother never got the dating board game, and that tragic Christmas experience has now made them, you know, overtly concerned about Charlie's Christmas experiences. And so they will do everything they can now, because Neil is a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and he's always diagnosing and therapizing the family. Yes, I just made up the word therapizing, but I feel like it works with him because he does some woo stuff in there too. But like, it's this idea that, okay, yeah, we're going to say no to Charlie, even though he's clearly still the age to believe in Santa, because of our traumatic experiences as children during Christmas.
Well, yeah, but not only that, they literally take away his father's right to see him because he believes in Santa Claus. Like, it just, they really take it extra far.
They do, but from the outside looking in, if you're watching this guy like literally transform himself, like if we're going by like actual diagnoses that exist now, you could argue that Scott Calvin has body dysmorphia and he's making himself look like Santa Claus, similar to people who are like obsessed with Barbie dolls and want to make themselves look like a Barbie doll. So he's taking it in their minds way too fucking far, feeding into his kid's imagination. Like, that's sweet, but they're concerned. I can see their concern in the long run from a certain extent. I don't know if I would take his parental rights away. I think the one scene that probably leads me to thinking he should have his parental rights taken away, though, is the scene where they're in the park and he's just sitting there on the bench and all these kids come over and sit on his lap and ask him for certain presents, and he lets them. And I was just watching that scene. I'm like, anybody in a park around kids that were not theirs would be taken away immediately. That's concerning right there. You're on a list right after that, and that's grounds to take his parental rights away.
Things are different in the 90s, man.
I don't think so. I think it's just different.
You could be
in
a
Disney
creep in the
movie.
90s. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, see, that's the problem with these movies, is there are two perspectives. I mentioned this in our pre-show, where it's like you can look at this story from the perspective of a child and you laugh along and you're like, Christmas, Santa, haha, funny, and you're loving it. As an adult, you're questioning your own life decisions now. You're thinking like all these crazy scenarios through with this man. But that's not what this movie is about. This movie is not meant for you as an adult. It's trying to be as realistic as possible, and there are adults making it. So yeah, they do these things, throw them in that make it relatable and whatnot. But like, man, it is so fucked up when you start thinking about this shit for any longer than you should.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I never thought I would have to watch the Santa Claus with an analytical eye, and it's kind of regretful that we did.
Yeah. Now that I think of it, we're probably doing a disservice to the series, the trilogy. by watching it with a critical lens and breaking it down. But I don't know, it's fun too, because like you can recognize those things that are super weird and creepy in hindsight and with a critical lens. And I'll probably never see these movies again the same way, which is unfortunate, because I enjoyed these movies before and it probably ruined them for me. But at the same time, I can still appreciate all the stuff that makes it a cute family movie. And it's all meant to be innocent stuff. It's not meant to be malicious stuff.
Of course.
Just like in the last episode when I accused Doc Brown of being a predator. He's not really a predator, but you got to ask the question sometimes.
I mean, we really don't know about Doc Brown still, but you never know. But
Morty!
I wanted to point out, like, the Santa Claus aspect aside, Tim Allen in this movie, especially as Scott Calvin, has my number, man. Like, he makes me laugh so hard. Some of my favorite lines come from this movie, like when he says, "When Neil's head comes to a point." He has his dynamic with Neil in particular. I think it's so funny the way they go back and forth. When he's coming back from the North Pole in the morning, I'm getting a CAT scan. Like those dad jokes just hit me so good. And it's, again, Tim Allen is not my favorite human being, but man, he's got my number in these movies for sure.
He plays a great, moderate conservative Santa Claus, like the Santa Claus that voted for Ronald Reagan in the 80s and without a doubt voted for
he's your
Dan Quayle in the 90s.
He's your Mitt Romney Republican.
Yeah, totally. But he's also like a good guy. Like that's the thing. Like you can't fault this man for some of his beliefs that might be a little stoic and, setting us backwards instead of forwards. But you can laugh with him because he's funny.
We're getting into different things here. We're talking about the belief system of Scott Calvin, which you can gather what kind of guy he is, but I think the only thing they actually lay out that he believes in is not believes in, but Santa. He wants his son to believe in Santa because he at least believes in childhood wonder, and that's nice. That's like the one redeeming quality he has before he becomes Santa, like I said.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
But his brand of comedy, and I think that's definitely Tim Allen's brand of comedy, not just special to these movies, are like the one-liner just dad jokes that are snarky retorts to something somebody else said that's serious. And it works so well, especially in the first movie. It kind of diminishes in the second and third movie because then he's Santa Claus and he has to be holly and jolly. He still has it a little bit, but definitely in this first movie, I appreciate that so much. It really makes this movie less of a kid's movie for me and, gives the parent or the adult something to cling to when you're watching this.
I also find myself disliking all of the other adults and really starting to care for and cheer for Tim Allen throughout the movie. So I think that really helps solidify this and his relationship with Charlie, because the movie sets you up to believe it's a bad relationship. They go on coke binge around the town delivering presents, and all of a sudden now their relationship has completely changed. It's that great father-son relationship you dream of in the movies, like when you go see them. And now you get to see that taken away as this story unfolds where they don't believe him to be the Santa Claus, and now he loses his rights, blah, blah, blah. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point. As a father, like I kind of watched this with another lens, as that father figure, and you see the relationship change from kind of distant to redeemed to stripped to nothing's going to get in the way of our relationship, father and son wise. Like seeing those shifts in Charlie and Scott's relationship with that parental lens is a lot more interesting than I remember, and a lot more emotional than I remember as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And then that leads to toward the end as things kind of come to a close and they come together when Neil and Laura believe that he's Santa. Suddenly their perspective on him totally shifts and they're like, holy shit, like if this guy is really Santa, he has been an incredible father through this entire thing. And we have taken his son from him. And it sets up in the later movies something that you don't see a lot from divorced couples and the stepfather and those relationships is like these people then start considering each other all to be family, and it extends the family rather than shrinking it and isolating the mom and the dad who were divorced. It becomes way more than that and really sets up for nice relationships as we go forward into the series.
Yeah, you have that modern family aspect of, that kind of began in the 80s and 90s, that we see culturally.
Well, it's also trying to give purpose to those other movies too. Like, all right, this trilogy is based on these clauses, but like, why these clauses? So they have to like teach you lessons, that's the attempt the authors or the writers came up with was, okay, let's have these clauses, these rules, but also there's going to be purpose given. So let's teach lessons. Let's teach about family. Let's teach about these things because it's Disney. That's what they do in their productions, is that they want to tell good family stories, and a good family story involves learning lessons from father to son, from mother to daughter, from sister to brother, whatever those family movies are, they got to give you some kind of lesson.
Totally. Yeah. And they do a good job at it. I don't know that there's really, we're talking about, the characters and everything. There's not a whole lot of, else going on. I mean, we could talk about Bernard. How do we feel about Bernard? What's his name? He's in like a billion things.
It's something Krumholtz. I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Krumholtz. I did find it interesting. The Jewish man is playing a elf.
Yeah, that was my first thing.
And like beyond that, like that's just a fun inside thing. Like if you're an adult and you just realize cultural differences, like weird that he's the elf in Christmas when he was probably born and raised Jewish. We don't know, obviously, but he seems to be of Jewish descent with the last name and everything. So, but he's also the only elf who is at reasonable height, which I find weird. I've also found the elves as children very off-putting. I don't know about you guys. I was not comfortable with it at all. Like it was what it was, but the fact that they're saying that these are adult elves, but their children acting as them just really didn't sit well with me, especially watching it this time around. I'm like, wow, I never noticed how disturbing that is to me. I don't know. What did you guys think about that?
What made you so uncomfortable with it? The idea that these kids are playing adults?
I don't know. It just seemed so weird to me. And especially too, when you go into the next two movies, like you get to Curtis, he grows exponentially between 2 and 3. And like, I know you got to suspend the disbelief, but I'm just like, man, these are supposed to be elves and they're all kids. But this one, like the main ones, grow from movie to movie. And it just made me start thinking about like, how do elves work? I don't get this shit, because it seems like they're going through puberty, but then every movie you get young elves again around them. So I don't know. It was just a weird thing to me. I don't know.
No, there's a specific weird scene from the first one where, I'm blanking on his name. I'll just say Tim, because that's what it is. Tim Allen. The Tool Man.
Scott Calvin.
Scott Calvin, thank you. It's when he and the female elf
Judy.
Judy, is that her name?
Yeah, that's a little bit uncomfortable.
Name is the waitress. So Judy and him have this interaction in front of the bed with hot cocoa and talking about her age and like involvement with another person. Very uncomfortable watching that moment happen. Because here it is, it's an adult male talking to a child, but the child is supposed to be hundreds of years old. So it's one of those things where as a kid, haha, funny, adult, what the fuck am I watching right now? That really made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I guess that sums it up perfectly. That scene, it's children acting like adults, like very purposefully acting like adults, like not just that they are cast as adult elves, it's that they are acting like adults, and it just doesn't feel right. And yeah, specifically that scene, I forgot about that scene in particular, and that's a really good example of it. But I don't know, I've spent way too much time on that, but just super off-putting to me. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I didn't really have the same reaction to it. I can see where you're coming from for sure. I mean, it's especially a scene like that where it's, you know, this little girl is kind of is having an adult conversation with the guy that just killed Santa Claus. So I definitely understand where you're coming from there, but
yeah, that's another thing too. They're way too comfortable with this guy who definitely killed Santa Claus and took his clothes.
Yeah, that part is what makes me more uncomfortable. Everybody's just like this. It just kind of happens from time to time, you know. Big guy falls off the roof. We get a new
dead
guy.
Santa. No big deal.
Oh man, I love how Bernard kind of like just acts like he's just supposed to know all this. You know, like Scott, what are you talking about? Like you're the guy. You're Santa Claus now. Welcome to the club. Like, but there was no introduction. There's no orientation. They're just kind of thrown into it. And he's like, Scott, what don't you get about this, buddy?
No, I love him. He's like, Bernard is actually one of my favorite characters, and a big disappointment he doesn't make an appearance in the third one. But yeah, his whole character in this movie in particular, he's middle management. He's like, he knows that there's shit that's got to get done, and he's going to do it. He's going to get all the things working and moving. And he's reporting to his boss about it too, because he knows he has to manage his boss along the way. He's used to this shit. He gets a new Santa every, nearly 1,000 years or whatever, and he's got to go through the same process. Like, yep, I know we're gonna go through this. I get it. Yeah, but I got shit to do. Top, down, up, below, left, right. Come on, let's go. Next thing.
Yeah, again, a great example of late stage capitalism.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So beyond the characters in the North Pole and in the movie, I did want to talk about the North Pole in general, and like the kind of the effects in the scenery, and just how much I adore the North Pole aesthetic in the Santa Claus. Like, it's just, there's something about it that's just so nostalgic to me, with just all the festive decorations, and just everything is incredibly purposeful in terms of their decor. I love the aesthetic of the North Pole in all these movies, but especially when we're introduced to it in the first one. I think it's really endearing.
Yeah, do you mean specifically right now the first one, or are you referring to all of them? Because they change. In the first one, I don't know if it's my favorite, because I wasn't even thinking about liking them or not, like how I'd rate them or whatever. But like, I definitely noticed the changes in both movies, and it was kind of jarring, in fact, at this place. So like, as an adult now, thinking about it, is like, does this like magically change like every year? Is this something that happens? Is this like canonical where over the year, like the whole fucking little village changes? Or am I just supposed to accept as a kid, like, North Pole, cool, shiny, bright?
I think you're expected to just kind of take it as it is, like, oh, maybe they're showing a different part of the North Pole here. I don't really think too much into that so much, but
no, the whole aesthetic changed. Like, literally the look, you go from the first one, which is kind of like pastel colors, not so
large baubles, and
not as like traditional Christmas looking as the next movie, where things become, the palette becomes very like warm in color. There's a lot more wood, a lot more red, instead of all of the more futuristic things that we saw in the first one.
Well, maybe Scott Calvin as Santa made some changes. Maybe there were some renovations done. I mean, there's quite a bit of time that occurs between the first one and the second one. Charlie's a teenager by the time we get to the second movie.
This is true.
He could have totally changed the entire operation. And, you know, in the subsequent 2 movies, everybody seems pretty happy with everything he's doing there. And they talk about in the second one, not to get into it too far, with the council, or what is it? Council of Legendary Figures or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that child morale is up like 60% since he became the new Santa. So like maybe that's the canonical reason for it. But I agree with you, Zach, like just as far as the aesthetic and like it really, for the most part, feels like it's an actual village, which is pretty cool. I think more so in the next couple movies, because you spend a lot more time outside of the workshop itself.
Right.
But it really feels like it could be a real thing. And it's an interesting mix of like traditional things and technology. It's a weird, like high tech. I'd almost compare it to, like, obviously not in a serious sense, but like almost like Wakanda in Black Panther, where it's a lot of this traditional stuff mixed with high technology. The first thing you see when you come to the North Pole is this little candy cane thing come out of the ground, and this elf makes me crack up every time. I don't know if you remember this elf that you first see, but he comes out, that little thing comes out of the ground, and he just crosses his arms like this and just stares at Santa. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Are you trying to intimidate him? But and then he enters into a keypad, and then they kind of descend like they're going into the Bat Cave. It's really kind of whimsical if you think about it. Just a weird mix of high technology and traditional Christmas stuff, and I like it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I enjoy that aspect of it too. that elf is funny. He's like, "Hey, Rook, how you doing?"
Yeah, he looks like he just won a rap battle.
Yeah.
Crosses his arms like this with so much attitude.
You're
I know
really
nobody
in for it
listening
now,
can see it, but if you've seen these movies, you know what I'm talking about. He is the first introduction to an elf. And at the time, I think he might be a street tough.
Maybe was he part of the elves with attitude?
Oh, maybe.
What was that called again? The SWAT team of elves?
It was
forces?
elves, but it was elite something force. I don't know. I can't remember.
I love.
Yeah, it's like SWAT for elves.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of those like acronyms that they really try to force down your throat.
Yeah, some of them are kind of fun. Some of them are a little too much.
Yeah, they stretch a little bit.
ElfCon 1 to ElfCon 3 and the second one there.
Yeah.
How many elf puns can we use in each of these movies?
Right.
That should be like a count. We should go back and watch this again next time and count all the elf puns.
Oh yeah, we should start drinking too.
That'd be a dangerous drinking game, I think.
Right. So beyond the North Pole, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of obviously mystical and whimsical things that we see aesthetic wise, but a lot of it is, if not all of it, is in the first one. It's all practical. There's really
for the most part, but there's like a little bit of early CGI. Before we get to the North Pole specifically, when Tim Allen puts on the coat and they're going to the houses and delivering presents, it's that whole thing where he's going into the chimneys, like especially the one that's just a little smokestack aluminum pipe that he kind of warps into. Even though that's really cheesy now, it's actually not the worst effect I've ever seen from the 90s. It
does hold up. Yeah.
It holds up pretty well. I was surprised by that. But yeah, as far as the practical, I'm sorry I cut you off there, by the way.
No, that's okay. That's a good call, because I didn't really think about that when I'm thinking about
I just didn't want to forget it. But for me, practically, the reindeer look really good.
That's what I was gonna say too. The reindeer is the other big thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, like they're clearly puppets of some kind. They're really, really good. And like they're a little cartoonish in the eyes, like they've got the big cartoony eyes, but everything else, like the fur, the look and feel of them, they look like they're pretty real. And I think they did a really good job with the motion of them, the facial expressions. I was actually amazed looking back at this, like how well that was done practically.
I will agree on the practical effects part, though. But when it comes to CGI in this movie, I do not think it holds up today. That was one of the first like issues or criticisms I had of this trilogy, was we got to those first scenes of CGI and the whole Christmas shenanigans of going around the world and going down chimneys. I think I laughed out loud at that the first time watching it.
Right.
Because of how jarring it was after some of the stuff we've watched more recently, like even Back to the Future. The kind of special effects CGI in that is better than this movie, which comes out 10 years later. So it's like really low budget Disney movie meant to make a shit ton of money.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I definitely there are some things that stand out, like the when they're hoisting the actors, that looks really bad. When they're using the the invisible lines to hoist them up, that looks bad.
Every time he lifts up his bag and floats with that,
their legs just kind of come out from underneath them, like it doesn't look natural at all. But I think, and I'm glad Ted pointed this out, because I totally forgot about this part in terms of CGI. But when they expand the fireplace, like I think that actually is done pretty well. I don't know. I don't know. I agree that Back to the Future was beyond the Santa Claus here.
Oh my God! Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I can't. They are the level that went into this. It is totally just pure green screen. And
well, to be fair, there's not a lot of it, right? I mean,
no, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't disagree with the practical effects. I think those are done. Like the reindeer are some of my favorite things that happen whenever we get to see them. Their interactions are funny. I laugh at the reindeer fart jokes. I appreciate them. But the CGI that we are initially slapped in the face with is a reminder of why I don't watch these movies.
That's why you don't watch these movies?
Yeah, bad CGI. No, but I mean, like,
it's super nitpicky, dude.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know. When I see the Back to the Future movies, and I don't want to spend all of our time talking about this, but there's a lot of that 80s overlay CGI, that to me is really, really jarring. Like, I think the best example of that is like in have you guys seen Howard the Duck?
Mm-hmm.
In the like towards the end of the movie, when the guy gets like his all the powers, and like he's got all this electrical stuff, like everything is just like kind of laid right on top of the film itself. Like all these effects are just laid on the surface of everything. They're not integrated into it. And that's what I see in a lot of those 80s movies. Whereas here, it actually looks like it's a part of the scene. That to me is the difference between some of those, those 80s effects and the, early 90s effects.
The further we get into this, though, I will say in 3, there is some overlay effect that looks really bad that we'll get into. But as far as this one, I think the worst CGI effect, because like I said, I really like that going into the chimney. I think it holds up enough for a 90s movie. The worst ones are probably reindeer flying from far away. Yeah. Because we're watching that on a tube TV back in the day. You don't see it as well. You watch it on a high definition TV now, where the darks are really pronounced now. It doesn't look good because they relied on dark backgrounds back then for those things, which were essentially cartoons at the time, to look okay. And that definitely stands out to me. But we can agree to disagree on the chimney stuff. Either way, I'm not saying it's good, but I think it was relatively good. But yeah, did you guys pick up anything regarding the music? I didn't really pay too much attention to it myself because to me it was just kind of background, generic, Christmassy music. But I don't know if you guys really heard anything from it that stood out.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same. I'm actually just looking up who did it. It's Michael Convertino. I don't know who that is.
Michael Convertino?
Yeah. He's got a pretty hefty work history, but I mean, it nothing really in the soundtrack or... I take it back. Nothing in the score really stood out to me. The soundtrack is kind of fun, where they'll throw in some of the the pop tunes. I do like that.
Yeah, I like that the music in this is it's the soundtrack is very classical, and it sounds like a Christmas story. It's like you could take this music and it's the same music from Alf. It's the same music, really John Williams in some parts, where it's just intended to be background music in Home Alone, where it just fits nicely. And then you throw in these pop tunes every once in a while. I can't even remember them, Zach, but they were catchy, and I do remember, appreciating those moments throughout. But it's nothing that really stood out to me, but it definitely fit within the story being told because it's a Christmas story. So throwing a little bit of Christmas jingles in there every once in a while.
I think that's all you really need to be successful in a Christmas movie score. Just fit a vibe and you're good. You hit the festive feel and it works. Everything just kind of fits in together. So I don't really have much else to say about the music in this movie or in this franchise, to be honest.
Yeah, well, then we won't talk about music any further as we go through this. So that saves some time for us. But before we move on to the next one, did you guys see any other things that stuck out to you? Any funny moments, bad moments in particular? I know we hit on a lot of them.
Well, 3 surface level things that I think we would be remiss not to mention. Number 1, 90s sweaters were the pinnacle of fashion. I'm just going to throw that out there. Neil's sweaters are probably some of the best sweaters that I've ever seen in my life.
I mean,
2 out of the 3.
Andy's sweater right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really good stuff, and that's what I aspire to look like today. So I really wanted to point that out. Number 2, 90s cars are absolute dog shit.
They're the boxiest fucking things in the world.
If that's like the one, I love cars in movies, especially like these decade movies, because it's very telling of the era, and the 90s era in particular is the worst. They look so bad.
I've always thought to myself, like, you look at like the 50s and 60s era of cars with those like really sleek, rounded edges and just super well made. I wonder if like 20 years from now, there's going to be a wave of people who are like, now that is classic. That 90s look. I love the 1995 Ford Escort. Man, do I like that.
Man, just all those squares and rectangles. It looks so good.
Just at car shows.
We're already there. Let me tell a quick story at Bonnaroo.
Oh, sure.
Here I am, tripping balls. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
And I'm in line to get food, and this dude behind me, he's got like you're like a classic 90s t-shirt on, and somehow we get talking, and he runs this self-run business where he goes to thrift stores, he finds classic clothing and then sells it again on the internet. And I'm thinking like, oh, classic clothing. He's going around finding stuff from like the 70s, maybe like some 80s stuff there. This motherfucker tells me like the thing he's wearing, he's talking about how he sells it, it's from like 1995. Like, dude, that's not classic. Don't say that. Never say that again.
It is.
Why would you insult me like that here at Bonnaroo in this moment? Why would you do that?
It totally is, especially fashion wise. Like, you know, the 90s aesthetic is very hip right now. You know, from like baggy jeans and, you know, weird looking t-shirts and crop tops, like that's all like mainstream fashion. However,
crew neck sweaters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that the Cars will ever become a desirable aesthetic.
No, but it's something that I always think about. Like, how will this be looked upon in year whatever when somebody does find this interesting? Yeah, those are absolute dog shit. You said there was a third one that you saw surface level?
The last thing I have to give a shout out to the Santa Claus interrogation scene. It is probably one of my favorite scenes in any Christmas movie ever, when he gets arrested in his ex's house delivering Charlie's presents. And they bring him into the interrogation room, and they're trying to get him to admit that he's not Santa Claus, that he's Scott Calvin, but he won't do it. He just says he's Santa Claus in all these different cultures. In the one classic line, "Ho ho shisho," is my I lose it every time. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. So shout out to that scene.
Yeah, that is a good one. I've got a couple moments that I really liked. You mentioned when they went to Denny's earlier and they didn't have chocolate milk. Well, the scene right before that, he says, Denny's is an American institution. And the moment they go in there, it's filled with Japanese businessmen just cackling. And I just thought that was such a funny transition from scene to scene. And it's so subtle, but man, I thought that was hilarious.
That is funny.
Andy mentioned that the reindeers fart. Yeah, they fart every movie. It's classic. It continues. That's probably the through line of these movies is reindeer farts.
I mean, you can't get mad at a fart joke.
No.
I'll never throw it out.
And it gets better in the second one, I think. I love that Scott is lactose intolerant when he is first delivering presents and the little girl wants him to eat the cookies and milk. Oh, man. Let's see here.
I like that moment because when he revisits her, she leaves out soy milk and he's like, I think your milk's gone bad. And she goes, no, I got you soy milk. That made me happy.
Yeah.
And that's 90s soy milk. So you know it's bad.
Yeah.
That's not your modern day silk.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I guess the last thing I really like, because I already talked about where he has the kids sitting on his lap. An earlier scene before that is when Charlie has him in for career day. And Charlie goes into the whole thing like he's Santa. And this is at the point where Scott still believes it was a dream and it didn't happen, whatever. And after Charlie tells the whole story of how he became Santa, this one kid in the classroom essentially picks apart the movie. And he's like, let me get this straight. If I want to be Santa, I just have to push you off a roof. And I'm like, I love that they inserted the line that just deconstructs this movie and talks about how ridiculous it is within the movie. You can tell the writers had fun with this. Like, even though it's batshit ridiculous, they knew it was. And that's fun.
And spoiler alert, that's going to come up as a plot device in another movie.
Oh,
yeah. Absolutely.
That's funny.
Did you have any, Andy? Any moments?
I mean, you guys talked about a bunch of things already. I like when we get to the North Pole and you get to see the inside of the workshop, all of the like hot chocolate stuff and like the small details, the like, I think it's later on in the other movies. I think there are vending machines in the first one. Am I mixing that up?
I think it's only in the third.
That's the Red Bull machine in the third one is the big one.
I do like them. I thought there was another kind of like vending machine thing, but anyways, I like how like all of the hot chocolate stuff and how it's all Christmassy and the elves moving around, like the little details that are used throughout this movie that remind you like this place is 24/7 Christmas. Like that's like every day at the North Pole is essentially preparing for Christmas. So you're baking cookies, you're drinking hot chocolate, all those fun things. But you guys all already talked about all the scenes and moments and whatnot, the jokes.
Yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about kind of the aesthetic of the North Pole is like it very much reminds me of in 2015 we went to Germany for a visit, and they had this Christmas store, and of course we couldn't not go in to a Christmas only store in Germany. And so we went in. It really reminded me of the Santa Claus aesthetic. It had that very big and over the top festive vibe to it, and I think that's why I like it so much. Like it's just got that kind of European, classic, over the top Christmas style to it.
Yeah, I like that aesthetic of the very European Santa with like the twine sash around his waist, and right. I don't know, it looks very traditional, but also it's very different than like the Coca-Cola sipping Santa Claus that we have over here. It's just very bare bones. It's just a fat guy in a suit that looks like it was made for a malt Santa. I wish we would actually adopt the more traditional looking Santa. I actually like, as these movies progress, they get more into like that traditional look of Santa Claus more and more. And it feels like they're getting into, like, even though these movies aren't serious at all, but like kind of the tradition and the lore of like Santa Claus and where it came from.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when I think of Santa Claus, Tim, I guess for better or worse, Tim Allen is what I think about. Like that's.
I think for better. Definitely for better.
Like that's the image that comes into my head. Like when you just think about Santa Claus, it's the Tim Allen full white beard and hair that comes into my mind. I guess
Santa Claus.
What's that?
It's a Republican Santa Claus comes to mind.
All right.
Okay. Hold on. Before we move on, last thing, and I will say, look at us. We've talked about one Santa Claus movie for 1 hour. Can we just appreciate how good we can talk? But also at the end of this movie, right? And let's just think about this for a minute. Just indulge me. At the end of this movie, after not being seen for generations, one neighborhood now has physical and visual evidence of the actual Santa Claus. How do you think that these folks are feeling about this, and how does it relate to The Secret of Santa Claus?
I want to point out before I really get into it, that because it reminded me of the scene, especially because this is when the cops swarm the house again. Real American cops would have shot Santa dead. They would have shot every one of the fucking reindeer. His sleigh would have crashed, and they would have shot him dead. But instead, they just gawk at him.
Well, that goes to my point. This is a very big deal.
Yeah.
There is, for generations, there's been no Santa Claus sighting. Now, hundreds of people see Santa Claus.
Yeah. And all they can do is gawk and smile and laugh. Like all the parents are laughing with the kids.
Well, hold on. Let's hold up. We don't know that. So you're making assumptions about this universe. We got to get the prequel to answer these questions. Because what if Santa is a popular conspiracy that's spread among the people? and we kind of see this in the next film. We're teasing this. We're getting there. Is when they got that plane. What's that plane doing up there? Do we have answers? Do we know what that plane was doing? Maybe in this world, people do believe in Santa and others don't. They deny it. It's like a conspiracy theory. There's people on the internet. They're in chat rooms in the 90s talking about it.
Are they flat earthers of Santa Claus?
Yeah. They know. The U.S. government knows. NATO knows. They know where he is. They are actually fucking tracking him because he is a threat to national security.
Right,
this is a part of the universe.
I regret.
I like that headcanon.
I regret.
I like it.
Just bringing this up. All right.
No regrets.
No,
Absolutely.
I definitely regret.
I love it. That's good content right there.
All right. So let's hit on the second movie real quick. You mind if I just go through it?
Yeah, go for it.
I want to read this one.
You want? Okay. All right, Andy. Very eager. Take it away.
All right. This is Santa Claus 2. This what?
No subtitle.
That's it. Just the Santa Claus suit.
The third one has a subtitle. The second one doesn't.
Why don't they have a subtitle? Well, I'll give it one. Charlie should question his sexuality. So, all right. Here we go.
I'm ready for it. Let's go.
Scott's now teenage son Charlie gets caught spray painting pro-Christmas art in his school gym by his principal, Carol Newman. Scott, now fully entrenched as Santa, finds out that Charlie is on the naughty list and decides to go home to deal with this. Before he leaves, Bernard and Curtis, another fucking new assistant elf here, tell Santa about another rule that they conveniently failed to mention prior to the events of this movie, the Mrs. Claus. Santa has to get married before Christmas or he will cease to be Santa. There's also another clause too, which they're not going to fucking tell him, but we'll save it for the third movie.
Yeah.
To fill in while he's gone, Curtis makes a toy Santa clone so the other elves don't become suspicious. And this fucking thing does not look like Tim Allen in person. It's really fucking creepy. After Charlie gets in trouble again, Scott suggests that Charlie do community service to avoid suspension, and Carol ropes Scott into helping as well. Probably the first scene where the sexual tension between them begins. To Charlie's disgust, a romantic relationship begins between Carol and Scott. Meanwhile, in the North Pole, toy clone Santa becomes very strict about the rules and takes over in a dictator-like fashion and even wants to give all children coal. Scott, running out of time and magic, confesses to Carol that he's Santa, but she doesn't believe him. Dejected, Scott hitches a ride with the Tooth Fairy in the North Pole to save the elves from plastic Hitler Santa. After Charlie convinces Carol that his dad is Santa, they too hitch a ride with the Tooth Fairy and save Scott and the elves. After a tough fight, Scott and the elves defeat Toy Santa and his toy soldiers, and he ends up marrying Carol right before time runs out. Because why not? You just met this man. Let's get married, and he's Santa Claus. So there we go, boys. That's Santa Claus 2. Charlie should question his sexuality.
I feel like a better subtitle would be the Santa Claus 2 suspension of disbelief. You really got to stretch it on this movie, and I did. It's fine, but I mean, you gotta really let it play out.
Absolutely, and maybe it could also be called, instead of Charlie questions his sexuality, Charlie gets his first boner, because I think he does get his first boner right before he's about to kiss the girl and falls into the ceiling of the gymnasium and starts tagging the wall with some pro-Christmas art.
Real bad. Yeah, no, he's a badass for sure.
Really sticking it to him. The war on Christmas is happening in school, and Charlie's here to fight it.
Bill O'Reilly must have loved that kid.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So you guys kind of glossed over us, and I'm going to bring it up now because this is something. These movies are very political, and they are definitely shifted to the conservative side of the political spectrum, and it's ingrained within the plot. And this is a prime example of it. And we'll come back to this in the third movie too. So that's a little foreshadowing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's definitely some bias there. I think they really try hard not to, but yeah, the fact that there's a literal war on Christmas in this movie, it says a lot.
Yeah, and while watching the movie, I realized that they were going with the War on Christmas angle, and they took the real cop-out reasoning for it, too. She was like, oh, there's not enough funding for Christmas decorations. That would cut into the budget. And I'm like, oh, just admit it. You hate Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol. Oh, my God.
Whoa. You know what? I didn't even think about that.
Wow, mind blown. I watched that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Check that out. That is a discovery.
That is a real moment happening here. Mind blown in real time. Okay. I just put 2 and 2 together. We figured it out.
And it's kind of fitting too, because you really detest Carol at the beginning of this movie. But eventually you kind of grow to like her. She just kind of gets stuck in your head and you find yourself singing it before bed so you can't go to sleep. That's kind of like the Christmas Carol comparison.
Yeah, that's a good one. So let's see here. Let's get into this movie. I mean, so first of all, Charlie, a teenager, thinks it's super cool and super badass to spray paint pro-Christmas stuff. And it's got to be super dejecting for Scott to find out that his son, the son of Santa Claus, is on the naughty list. That has to be horrible for him to find out. And
they didn't want to tell him.
Yeah. By the way, all these elves just spend these movies arguing about who's going to tell Scott the thing that they haven't told him. These middle management people are really shitty at their jobs. They're just keeping secrets from their boss, the higher up guy who's doing a great job. He's got, we talked about it for the last movie a little bit. He's got morale up significant amounts, according to the Council of Legendary Figures, which includes Mother Nature, the Sandman, the Tooth Fairy. That's where he comes in later on.
The Molinator.
Cupid. Yeah, he wants to be called the Molinator. It's a little fun
Roy.
Sequence there. Yeah,
Roy.
or Roy. I guess that's his given name. I wonder how he became the Tooth Fairy. I wonder if it's a similar process, but instead he has to remove all the teeth from the previous Tooth Fairy. Before he
Do you think we'll get a spinoff?
Oh, that'd be great. I want to see a movie about each individual legendary figure and how they became the legendary figure.
Okay, let's expand this. What's the movie with Rock? The Rock, and he plays the Tooth Fairy.
Tooth Fairy. I think it's
called the Tooth Fairy. Yeah.
Okay. Is it a Disney movie? If so, maybe it's connected.
So is it canon? You think that's canon?
I'm gonna call it, because definitely it's set in the mid 2000s. Probably when the movie came out, right? So 2005.
Probably 2010s.
Even later. Better. That works out better, because then you avoid Roy passes the torch to we find out there are more Tooth Fairies. That's what it's about. Like, we only see one of the Tooth Fairies who sits on the council. He's like a representative. Like, they vote him in. Like, that's his process.
They picked a bad one.
Well, who knows? It's democracy. Maybe.
Democracy is broken. That's fair.
That's the representative. Well, to be fair, if you look at real life and who we elect as representatives, he's better than the representatives we elect who fuck us over every fucking day. So there you go. I like Roy better than anybody in Congress.
Roy is still beholden to corporate donors.
True.
I don't know what to say to that. Well, since we're talking about it, can we just keep going with the whole council thing here? Because I do like it. In fact, part of the reason why I do like it is it expands the universe now of the Santa Claus. Like, not only is there Santa, but there are these other legendary figures for the other holidays, which is important for the next movie. So it's kind of like building upon the lore from the previous one. And all of the characters, I think, are absolutely funny. They make me laugh. I don't remember any of them who they are, but like, I think they all have great moments and scenes. And the Easter Bunny is creepy as fuck.
The creepiest Easter Bunny of all time. Yeah, without a doubt. I actually wrote that down as a note. It is scary.
Did you guys watch the end credit bloopers for 3? Because they go right into that with the scene where he's creeping on the mother-in-law there. And she's like straight up super uncomfortable every time they do a take, and he knows it. And he's playing off of that.
It's so funny. His face is just real tough to look at.
Yeah. And then on top of that, the ears just keep moving back and forth. It's pretty off-putting.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah. But yeah, that is interesting that, like, even though this is a kind of small universe, they do a little bit of world building. And that's actually a nice little touch that they acknowledge that there are these other holiday figures out there or seasonal figures. So yeah, that's a nice little touch that they put in there. Well, let's get into fucking Toy Santa, how creepy that shit is.
Bro.
I mean, what a bad idea, Curtis.
Yeah, well, first, I mean, Curtis is probably the worst, right? I mean, if we were just to say, like, who the worst is, it's got to be Curtis.
Yeah, in my notes, I have him as resident elf nerd.
What he was in, like, a Disney show, right? Was he, where's he from? Nothing?
I don't know.
Nothing comes to mind? All right. I thought he was, like, some, like, prominent Disney actor at the time. He probably is. I just don't know. I totally recognize him from something, but I don't know what it is. Regardless, Curtis is the worst. He almost gets them caught by the Coast Guard or the whatever is flying over the North Pole of all places.
The conspiracy group. They're looking. They're searching.
That's Q.
Yeah.
Oh, you think it's a private organization? This isn't a government thing. That's a private organization trying to expose the North Pole.
We don't know. This is why we have to ask these questions, Zach. We have to investigate. We have to find out.
Okay. No, I feel like that's just like an awfully big investment for a private corporation to make. But
Zach, we're just asking questions, man. You know,
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
We're just asking questions.
All right.
Hashtag
right.
just asking questions.
I'm the sheep. I get it.
Yeah.
So he nearly gets caught by this conspiracy group. He keeps secrets from Santa. He makes the worst clone of all time. I mean, he's just a mess. And then after this movie, he becomes head elf. How? Tell me how. Why Curtis?
Yeah. Well, even worse, right after he makes the clone, he likes the clone because the clone becomes super rigid about the rules the way he is. He's like an ultra rule follower, which is not cool around the elves because they play it fast and loose there. They get shit done, but they've got high morale in the workshop. That's the one thing that Scott Calvin's brought. He's brought just a fun work energy. He's the guy who you go to the office and he says, "We have a lot of fun here, okay? We have a lot of fun. We like to joke around."
They do happy hour on Fridays.
Absolutely, at Applebee's.
Yeah, come on, kids. Let's go get some eggnog.
You got bean bags in the office.
We got $2 margs. Let's go.
That's funny.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, Curtis is a total downer. He's a super rule follower, and he brings this, like I put in the little synopsis, Hitler Santa to power here. While Santa's fighting for his Santa life, essentially, over there in the real world, he is losing his power. He's becoming less and less of Santa day by day, minute by minute, especially when he uses some of his magic to help convince Carol or help at that faculty party. Just all the things he has to do to try to expedite the process of her falling in love with him are these things that waste his magic. And meanwhile, they're letting a dictator run the North Pole. Curtis is a fucking mess, and he does not deserve to be head elf. And he's only head elf because presumably Bernard's dead in the next one. I don't know what happened to him. He just left a position open. Apparently that's how things work in this universe. You die, and then your job is suddenly open to everybody else.
Yeah, Bernard even took a turn in this movie, too. It's like because of the introduction of Curtis, we had to dumb down Bernard. And I don't know if dumb down's the right way of putting it, but
It is.
his character did change, and
No, I agree.
kind of didn't like it, but I like Bernard still. So I like Bernard a little less in this movie than I do in the first one, but I surely miss him in the next one. So it's sad what they do to the Bernard character. Hashtag not my Bernard, maybe, if I was a salty Star Wars fan for some reason. But yeah, it's like Bernard is kind of not ruined, but definitely brought down a peg from this movie thanks to Curtis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
I think we're all in agreement. Curtis, the worst.
All right. So as we go on here, well, Charlie gets super upset about that relationship going on between his dad and Carol. Obviously, that's a huge point of conflict.
Totally. And before we get into their relationship, the Mrs. Claus is
That's right.
We have the Mrs. Claus. He needs to find a wife before Christmas. But this is like 6 years after he becomes Santa Claus. Why all of a sudden does it kick in this year that if he doesn't become Santa, or if he doesn't find a Mrs. Claus, he's not going to be Santa anymore? Like,
Because that's the movie the year the movie came out.
yeah. No, I get the real world logic, but there's no attempt to explain that at all.
Yeah. Even further than that, it occurred to me while watching these. Okay, so the Santa before him died falling off the roof. When he gets to the North Pole, there's no Mrs. Claus.
There's no widow there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, like, what happened to Mrs. Claus? Did she just disappear when he disappears? Maybe. Or do the elves just off her? Well, Mr. Claus is gone. You're gone too. We got to get rid of the evidence that there was ever one here. Does she become a normal person like we get to in the third movie? Or do the elves just eat her, cannibalize her? I don't know.
Oh my God.
I'm picturing it right now. As soon as the Santa Claus dies, all of a sudden the elves like get this feeling, and they've been switched on like Order 66. Their chip activates, and they just all immediately stop what they're doing, and they hunt down the Mrs. Claus. And she notices something's wrong at first, so she tried to escape. So this whole time, while Tim Allen is off delivering presents and whatnot, the fucking elves are going after Mrs. Claus right now, trying to murder her.
She's like Obi-Wan escaping from the clones.
Yeah.
She gets out.
She's out there.
She's using a giant candy cane instead of a lightsaber. I like this universe we're building, guys.
I do. I'll tell you what. This is probably the only in-depth conversation about the Santa Claus that anybody's going to have about.
Absolutely. If anybody's been clamoring for this is the only place you're ever going to get this.
This is exclusive content.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing. But let's send this episode to Disney after this and really pitch this, because they're getting a little darker too. We can put that in there.
Can anybody tell me why this is happening right now?
I don't know. I mean, you said it, like 6 years, even more than that, maybe, because Charlie's a little kid in the first one. It might be like 10 years, right?
I really don't know, but
I mean, he's a teenager by the time this one starts, maybe a young teenager. So maybe it's not quite 10 years, but yeah, it seems like an arbitrary number of years since the first one happened that they're telling him that he needs to find a wife this Christmas.
And they never mentioned it before to give him any lead time to find a wife.
Yeah.
No, we got to fit it into
actually
2 weeks. You got 2 weeks to find a wife.
Yeah, which if we look back at the first one, it kind of contradicts, especially Bernard. Like the moment that Santa gets there, that Scott gets there, he is right on top of telling him, okay, this is the clause and this is why you're Santa and you've got 11 months to get things straight. Like Bernard, you said, Andy. Yeah, he is on top of this shit. He's ready to go. He wants to keep this a well-oiled machine. But for some reason in this one, like you said, he's dumbed down a little bit and decides that he's not going to tell Santa. And then he puts it all on Curtis, who's a fucking terrible elf. And it's on both of them essentially, that they're both being idiots in this, and you really got to question, why did they wait this long to tell him?
Yeah. All right. I guess we're never going to find out. I don't think there's an in canon explanation for it. No, but I'm definitely gonna request it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tweet. Do you think Matt Martin knows? Can I tweet Matt Martin? Is he part of this story group? Okay, a little too inside baseball there. But forget what I said. So that's the Mrs. Claus, and then hijinks ensues. He's got to go back to his hometown and find a wife in 2 weeks.
Yep. So that starts the conflict between him and his own child, because first of all, that's his mortal enemy right there. Carol Newman, the principal, is Charlie's mortal enemy because she's so anti-Christmas. He's got to tag everything in sight. He's the Banksy of Christmas. And, she's going to suspend him until Scott suggests the community service. They get all roped into it. And that's when they start having that connection there. But a little bit further, too, Charlie explains and gets super emotional to Scott later on in this movie about I have the best dad in the world who has the best job in the world. And I can't tell anybody about it. And it breaks my heart. I did find it funny, though, that the comparison was my friends can tell me that their dads are plumbers. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't compare to Santa Claus. So that's not really the best example here, Charlie. Maybe if you had a friend who had a dad who was a fireman or something, something really that meant something, I would get where you're coming from here. So he kind of comes off as a little whiny in that scenario, but there are a couple father-son conflicts in this movie. Yeah. So I guess my main point was, compared to the other movie, there's more conflict between a teenage Charlie who's emotional about not being able to share the wonderful news of his dad being Santa. And on top of it, Santa's trying to bone his principal, who he hates. I can't imagine what he's going through there.
No, you're right. It's actually kind of funny. They do a really good job at pulling Scott Calvin in all of these directions and really testing his resolve in these situations, between his conflict with Charlie, his conflict of having to find a wife, and then the chaos going on at the North Pole. He's got all of these touch points that he's just trying to keep together. And it's actually really, they did a good job at kind of expanding the plot a little bit in that way.
Well, and let's keep in mind here, too, this all stems from the moment where they kind of have that first interaction. And it's, well, not even the first interaction, it's after that. But it's the first interaction where I'd say Carol maybe starts to have feelings for him. It's when she tells him that he's going to volunteer to do this thing. He's being voluntold. Why are you having him do this on a day where it's clearly setting up for something to spend time with this man more so? And what's kind of funny about it is Tim Allen is in part of the fat prosthetic still. So it's That's the moment Carol finds him an attractive man. She's a chubby guy. That's her thing. She's into a chubby guy.
Yeah. It gets to the point actually where he starts becoming more and more just classic Tim Allen, where she's like, are you okay? You seem to have lost a ton of weight in a short period of time. That is not healthy. It is interesting to see that too. And she really falls for him when he's Tim Allen. And then when he gets back his powers and becomes Santa Claus again, it's just a very quick transformation. He is fucking Santa, and she's totally okay with it in the end of the movie. In fact, to the point, I love this line. I gotta find it so I can recite it perfectly, because it's one of my favorite lines in these movies. He tells her to get some rest when he's about to go on the sleigh at the end of the movie, because we're gonna have a 3-month honeymoon. And I'm like, oh shit, they fucking.
Yeah.
Dude, Santa fucks.
He does.
Oh, yeah.
Santa fucks.
There's clear evidence of that in the third movie.
It's funny.
Absolutely.
I love that you mentioned that like as he's desantifying, like she starts to find him attractive, or like she actually takes notice of him and notices his weight loss as well. And I wanted to point out, I feel like Peter Boyle is the only one in this franchise who is reasonable when it comes to the santification and desantification process. When he's his boss in the first movie, and he's like, what the fuck happened to you? He's like the only one that's like, dude, you got a problem. Everybody else.
By the way,
is
Peter
like,
Boyle is Father Time in the next two movies.
oh, you're right. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. I thought that was a fun little insertion of like, hey, Peter, you want to be in this one?
Yeah.
We don't have a place for your first character, but why don't you go ahead?
Build it in, boys. How do we fit him in here? Was he purposely in Tim Allen's life this whole time? I can't remember his fucking name. Steve Carnegie?
Scott Calvin.
Scott Calvin. He's secretly inserted himself into Scott Calvin's life to be his boss, so that way he could help with his transition by being like a negative driving force in his life to propel him towards the path of the Santa Claus.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I feel like it's more when Scott became Santa Claus, he kind of pulled some strings to find out where Peter Boyle could kill Father Time to become Father Time.
Ooh, like that.
Well, yeah, that either way, this is the spin-off that we unfortunately don't get because rest in peace, Peter Boyle. Great comedic actor. I wonder if they were setting up for that. Kind of like, you guys remember when with the X-Men movies, they did like X-Men Origins Wolverine? Maybe it was going to be Santa Claus Origins Father Time.
Dude, that would be perfect. I would love to see that. And the Tooth Fairy, let's go.
My God, Disney, we're giving you so many ideas. Take them. Give us credit, but take them.
Several shows.
Want royalties, though.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I want more than anything.
So where were we? We were talking about Newman falling for Santa Claus, and he does all of this stuff to, like, I guess kind of like get her to put all the strings together at the end. Like he does the sleigh thing. Yeah, he like manipulates her. It like she doesn't even really take the bait until Charlie explains it to her. But he like lays all of these, that lays this foundation for him to fall back on. Like, remember all this stuff? This was me. Like, this is, so when he actually tells her that he's Santa Claus, he at least tries to point to that evidence that he showed her, but she wasn't biting.
Yeah, well, kind of similar to what we see in Back to the Future when Doc Brown tells his lover that he's from the future. Carol does not believe Scott Calvin that he's Santa Claus, and it's another situation where she thinks for some reason that he's trying to drive her away, even though in that scene he's like, please don't throw me out. I'm telling you the truth. I want to stay here. For some reason, she can't reconcile with that, and she's another character. I don't remember what her Christmas trauma was, but she's another character who has Christmas trauma, right? Do you remember, Andy?
Oh, yeah. So her trauma was her parents were always fighting, except for Christmas. They made a big deal about not fighting on Christmas. So it made her always feel neglected during Christmas time, and she didn't get the doll that she wanted because of it.
Right. That's right.
Which she got at the holiday party, when he did all of his Secret Santa stuff.
Yeah, which is a super fun scene as well, turning this super drab work party, which I think we've all either been to or have seen in some capacity, a party that you just don't really want to go to, but you've got an obligation to go to, and somebody has to liven that shit up. And Scott Calvin, this dude that's just the dad of a student of hers, just livens that shit up, pulls presents right out of his ass, and everybody is like a kid again. He doesn't even have to give them alcohol. He doesn't spike the punch or anything. He just makes them feel the childhood joy that they missed out on when they were kids. And yeah, really pulling on that childhood trauma for everybody. Apparently everybody has not gotten the gift that they wanted to. And, you know, it makes me think about me not getting an N64 when I wanted one.
Oh, we should do that as a thing. What is the gift that we should have gotten?
Yeah, let's do that at the end. I can think of a few more too. But
man, you poor thing.
Yeah, you know,
yeah, there's more to that. That's really sadder. That maybe I'll make everybody sad about later on.
Oh no, don't do that. That's funny. Now, you know, I during that scene, all I could think about is like, man, if this was like an adult movie, like he would just be like throwing out blunts and dime bags and like it's like a euphemism for like bringing the drugs to the party, but they're just sad Christmas toys instead.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's giving them that rush that they need. It's giving them that dopamine hit that they want. And, you know, it's very similar to throwing drugs at everybody. That's for sure.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying.
If it were real Tim Allen, you know, it would be throwing some drugs.
That exactly my point. Exactly my point.
Yep.
He's always got the
tying it all together.
A little bit of a
hookup. Oh, Jesus Christ.
That was so loud. I love it. Leaving that in. Oh, man. Yeah, so let's shift back to the North Pole because we covered everything with Carol and Scott. So at this point, she has rejected him. She doesn't believe him. And he has to go back to the North Pole and figure everything out anyway, because he's still Santa. Even though he is desantifying, he is Santa. So he hitches a ride with the Tooth Fairy. He tries to get his tooth pulled out at first. And that's a fun scene between him and Neil, where Neil's like, oh, yeah, the old toaster trick. Tie your tooth to a toaster and just throw it down the fucking stairs. And every time they try any of these, it's just Tim Allen getting pulled by his mouth down to where the thing fell. It's never pulling out his tooth, so they fail. And luckily, Lucy, who we didn't even introduce yet, the daughter of Scott's ex-wife Laura and Neil, she just so happens to have lost her tooth. So they turn that into getting the Tooth Fairy there, and they hitch a ride with the Tooth Fairy back to the North Pole. They get caught by evil dictator Santa, and they get tied up. Unfortunately, what really saves them is, we kind of touched on it, Charlie goes and talks to Carol, convinces her that it's real, that Scott is really Santa Claus. They hitch a ride with the Tooth Fairy, and Charlie, being as young as he is, probably has at least some looser teeth in there, maybe some baby teeth, and he gets one pulled out and they hitch a ride. So that's a funny little moment when they get there. How'd you get here? And Charlie just smiles and you see the missing tooth in his mouth.
That is funny.
So Carol believes it. They're there to save them, and by the time they get them all untied and save all the elves, unfortunately, evil Santa just left on the sleigh. So there's a chase scene here, and it's right up to the Aurora Borealis here. And Scott, unfortunately, has to ride this dog shit reindeer named Chet.
Chet.
Was that the name of? Yeah. Reindeer in training named Chet, which, as much as I like the practical effects for the reindeer, I do have to say I hate the voices of the reindeer. Like the gibberish talk, especially this one with the laugh. It's got a really disturbing sounding laugh, like a child laugh. I don't know if you guys noticed that on this one, but
big time. You know why? You know why I noticed that? It's because I think I'm not positive. I should have looked this up, but I think the voice actor for Chet is the voice actor for Phil and Lil from the Rugrats, and it just totally triggered me.
Yeah,
we gotta look this up right now. We gotta look this up right now, boys.
Absolutely.
I had that voice recognition where you're like, I know that laugh, like I know that voice. I'm pretty positive.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now.
Well, while you look that up, I wanted to say too, I'm glad you brought up Lucy, because she's not a huge part of this story in terms of plot, but she is a great device to kind of start the chain reaction of fixing everything, right? Like, she kind of convinces Charlie to drop the cynicism, pick the joy back up in the belief of Christmas. And I think she tells her, like, things might be different, but he's still your dad and you love him, and you need to be there for him. And then he convinces Carol that everything is real because Lucy kind of restored his faith in Christmas and the Santa Claus. And that's when everything kind of, that's the chain reaction we see that leads to the Tooth Fairy bringing in Carol and Charlie. What do we find on Phil and Lil?
I'm still looking here. She's the voice actress for Phil and Lil here potentially has a very long resume of voice work.
Yeah, I think she's a pretty big voice actor. Yeah.
No, I think I got it. Her name is
Kath Sochi.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I saw while going through here, she voices Ezra Bridger's mom in Rebels.
No kidding.
Yeah, and she also voices a character in one of the KOTOR games. I don't know which one, and I wasn't really paying attention, but just interesting little tidbit there. Very prolific career for her. So, yeah, that does like trigger it though. Like, now that I hear it, it's the laugh of Phil and Lil, and I think that's why it was like super off-putting, because like it sounded like a baby to me, and I'm like, this doesn't add up. Chet's voice is very disturbing to me. So, where did you leave off? Because I was really like deep into looking this shit up while you were talking.
All I was saying was the Lucy was kind of like the catalyst to tie up all of our loose ends, essentially. Like I said, she convinces Charlie that he needs to forgive his dad, so that he can convince Carol that his dad is a good guy and this is really what's happening. And
that's right.
To actually bring us to the point where Carol is ready to marry this man that she just met not so long ago at the North Pole, after just finding out that he is Santa Claus.
Yeah. Yeah, so leading into that, there's the chase scene. He rides Chet. He redirects the sleigh. I think they crash the sleigh. I don't remember exactly. Neither here
I don't
nor
remember
there.
how that actually went down and what happened to what did happen to Hitler Claus.
I think they did crash.
Did they crash?
Yeah, I think so, but I wasn't paying too much attention at that point.
Did they like melt
but either way, it leads to like a kind of small battle between the elves and Santa Claus, with evil Santa Claus and his giant toy soldiers.
The Nutcrackers. Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a lot of snowball fighting going on. There's a lot of use of toys, which is kind of fun. Like toys deconstructing these toys. There's one point where a bunch of the elves like take out like power tools and literally deconstruct these toy soldiers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's using everything the elves have at their disposal, and it ends with them winning, and they shrink Hitler Claus to be the size of a regular toy again, and he's doomed.
Happened. Right.
Yeah, he's doomed to be a dancing Santa Claus toy later on in the movie, as it ends. So yeah, it really, this movie culminates with Scott talking to Carol. She's like, I believe, and she has to take a minute to like really consider, like, do I leave my entire life behind to marry this man who, like, yes, is Santa Claus, but also I've only known him for a couple days, and I've only known him as the dad of a student at my school. Like, what do I do here? So she takes a little bit of time, but she says yes with the insistence of Judy kind of coaches her along with what to say. And they get married. Scott stays Santa. He re-becomes Santa, I guess, and he goes out and delivers some gifts with teenage Charlie, and that's pretty much where we leave it, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to it than that.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to point out anything else about this movie before we move into the third one? Overall thoughts?
Not really. I think we touched on everything, even including like the little fun moments in this. I think
I got one for us.
Okay.
I can't believe we glazed over this. Is the date that Scott goes on? So he
with Molly Shannon.
Yeah,
That's right.
First trying to go on this journey to find the Mrs. Claus, his ex-wife sets him up with someone who's fucking obsessed with Christmas. So like that must be why. Like, oh, she's single, she loves Christmas, perfect. They're gonna go great together. But she is clearly looking for the D real bad. Like she's ready to slob all over it, and it's going to be this guy. But the problem is she embarrasses herself by singing a Christmas song. I don't remember which one it was.
She sings a Christmas version of Man I Feel Like a Woman.
Okay.
By Shania Twain.
That's it. Yeah, that's very uncomfortable. And there's a long
such a cringe scene.
Yeah.
Everyone, all the other patrons are just staring at her. It's insane. I can't
so funny.
Oh my god, so awkward. But like, yeah, it is a really funny moment.
I love Molly.
Yeah,
Shannon.
well, that's Molly Shannon to a T. Is just like cringe comedy, as much as you can bear until the very end.
Exactly.
She's so great at it. She's so great at making you feel uncomfortable. And it's so funny.
And I love his reaction to it too. He's like, that was a lot. Like, I don't know what to say.
I really put myself out there. Okay.
That's a good call. That was a great scene.
Yeah, that's a good one. Any others before we move on to 3?
I don't think so. This is just such a creepy movie. The plastic Santa just really makes me so uncomfortable, and the fact that he like literally dresses like a South African dictator is just crazy.
Yeah, it's some disturbing imagery in there.
Yeah, definitely,
sure,
definitely. Yeah, no, I think with Larry, let's wrap this one up and move into the Santa Claus 3. The Escape Clause. This one featuring Martin Short. So we're gonna get a musical number. That's what I was looking forward to. You can't have a movie with Martin Short without him singing something.
This is true. It's written into every contract.
It is. Very similarly to how Tim Allen has to be not fat, at least in one sequence every movie in this franchise. That is definitely contracted. So, anyway, so after opening, the opening scene is Carol is pregnant, and we have a false alarm that she's going to have the baby, and it's this. We open to chaos. They're running through the workshop and get to the hospital. And we see it's a false alarm. So at this point, she's like, all right, this is Christmas time. She tells Scott that she wants her parents to come visit the North Pole for the birth of the child, which is going to cause a problem. So to pull this off, they're going to have to pretend that the North Pole is not the North Pole and instead is just generically Canada. This is just
not a bad idea.
Canada. Meanwhile, the Council of Legendary Figures finds Jack Frost, the aforementioned Martin Short, guilty of trying to upstage Scott and is sentenced to work in Santa's workshop for the holiday. So Frost he's clearly our antagonist here. He's up to no good, and he actually eventually tricks Curtis, the best elf in the whole world,
fucking idiot,
who now is somehow older from his 900-year-old past. We'll get into that. Telling him about the escape clause, basically that if Santa says that he wishes he was never Santa again, with this very specific snow globe, then we can have a time shift. We can have something that actually changes the lineage of Santa Claus. So Jack begins enacting a plan to become Santa, sabotaging the workshop and alienating Scott's in-laws against him. When Scott is at his lowest, Frost tricks him into holding the magic snow globe while saying that he never want to become, or he wished that he never became Santa at all. And here we go. We're changing time. So Frost steals the coat that was on the dead Santa back in, 95? Is that when the first one came out? I don't really remember.
I think so.
Is it 95? Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But then basically we go into an alternate reality. He's still the Scott Calvin businessman, but he's now modern day. Charlie hates him. Neil and Laura are divorced. And Frost has turned the North Pole into a resort, essentially, like a theme park. So Scott does find Lucy and Neil at the North Pole and kind of employs Lucy to help him get the snow globe and change everything back. So at the towards the end of the movie here, Lucy hugs Frost, warming his heart and unfreezing the victims, which were her parents, and he's just kind of stuffed them away for the whole movie. So that was kind of interesting. And then we see our spawn of Santa, Buddy.
Yeah.
That's the third movie. So this was weird.
Yeah. That was.
Yeah, it's a really strange movie. I think that, if we know that there's the Santa Claus 3 after Santa Claus 1, it's probably going to be about his kid, right? I mean, or his potential spawn. It's just kind of the progression that we see through these movies and the growth of Santa Claus. But this was a weird way to play it out. What do you guys think?
It wasn't the baby clause, though. So it's weird because this is the one where it actually diverges from what it is, because they introduced the escape clause, right? So it's this whole thing about like, oh, how do you get out from being the Santa? There's no more thing he has to do. It's just like, oh, if I were to do this one thing, we're introduced to this other character who's now going to try to do that thing for him. So it's the first time it kind of turns it on its head for what the plot is of the movies.
Sort of, but it's very directly related to his family issues. He's now he sees this potential for a healthy, happy family, but he also has this immense pressure of being Santa Claus, and trying to balance the two proves to be difficult for him during this movie. And so that's the reason why we see the escape clause even come up. Is because of the family issues that he's experiencing.
Yeah, and on top of that, you get and Scott spells this out for everybody in the movie. He starts fearing that he's going to fall back on his old habits and essentially screw things up with this family like he did the first one. So he's like, things were going great with my first family, and then we had our child, and then I got consumed with work, and he's afraid of doing all of that while at the same time falling into those habits. He is becoming way too consumed with work. There are several moments where he's either taken away by elves to fix an issue, or they're calling his phone and he keeps trying to ignore it, but they keep calling him, and it causes conflict with Carol. It causes conflict with the in-laws because they see what's happening. They don't want their daughter to be in a relationship where she is going to be ignored and she's not going to be treated the way that she needs to be. So it causes all this conflict. And even though Jack Frost orchestrates a lot of it and exacerbates it, these are things that were probably bound to happen anyway, with just all of the pressure of the child coming, the in-laws coming. And on top of that, this is right before Christmas, the biggest day of the year at Santa's workshop. And meanwhile, he's got to pretend he's in Canada. It's hard to run your place when you're pretending it's something else. I'll say that.
Speaking of Canada, so that's the plot device that is actually pretty funny.
It's really funny.
That's used to allow Carol's parents, the in-laws, to come up to the North Pole, which kind of contradicts, there's a little bit of retconning here, our previous understanding of Carol's parents. Because in the last one, her childhood trauma is the poor relationship with her parents, and what happens on Christmas because of that. So now we're led to believe in this movie, oh, yeah, well, they're just these, bumbling, typical movie in-laws who, dad's does all of the, type of work and stuff now that he's retired, woodworking and whatnot. Very similar to your dad, actually, Zach. Not going to lie. Some similarities there.
He just said your dad's bumbling.
I was actually going to say, all right, so
that's not a similarity.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think that, so we see that, her parents are relatively supportive in this movie, right? But in the last movie, we hear from her that as a child, they really didn't get along, and it was kind of a strenuous household. But I think that it's as we progress as adults and just people in general, that can change. So that is, I find it funny that you say it retcons it. I really enjoy the analysis that you put into that, but I think that we just have to kind of overlook that in terms of character growth.
Of course.
I can't.
I love that we are talking about this franchise right now.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
That's the thing I was just thinking about is the people that wrote this movie were thinking the exact opposite. They're like, well, there's no way anybody's ever going to nitpick these movies or give a shit. So we can do whatever we want. And that's fine. And honestly, as far as retcons go, it's a small one compared to ones in more serious series that people actually give a shit about. So it's not that much of a foul.
Right, hold on. Before we move on, let's backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
Then can we talk about the worst elf of all time and how he is now the head fucking elf? How did that happen? How
Again, I think he killed Bernard.
You think he killed Bernard? I mean, honestly, he might as well have. I mean,
he killed Bernard, put on Bernard's cool hat, which he's not wearing in the movie for some reason, but then he became Bernard.
Yeah, that's the coat in this case, is Bernard's cool hat.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's the in-universe explanation that I can think of.
That makes sense. And he does age in this movie physically from the last time that we saw him about 6 years ago. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, he's about 13 years old and had quite a growth spurt.
Yeah. I wanted to bring it up because I do think that it's explainable in that, maybe the head elf is the only one that ages physically when they become head elf. What if maybe that's the magic of the position?
I'm going to go with
get behind that.
The stress of middle management leading you to age in.
It could be. I mean, that's definitely what caused my hair loss, so it's very possible. It's very possible.
You know what? Again, we're coming up with great in-universe explanations for things. There's so much money to be made here, Disney.
Oh, that's funny.
Spin-offs on spin-offs.
It's going to be a series on Disney Plus.
Oh my God. Yeah. Can you imagine if they announced it at the investor meeting?
I'll take Bob.
It'd be very, yeah. Could you? Yeah. Get Bob on the line. All right. So let's talk about Jack Frost.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Frost, the nefarious Jack Frost in this movie. He's up to no good.
He's like a tertiary legendary figure too. I found that kind of odd because the whole thing is he's upstaging Santa, and it seems like, at least from what we see of the legendary figures, there's only one legendary figure per season or holiday. But for some reason, for Christmas, Jack Frost is also there. And I wonder if it's just specifically because Jack Frost is a thing in Christmas lore, or if there are more, maybe there's a counterpart to the Easter Bunny. Maybe that's Jesus. resurrected Jesus. Do we know?
We're just adding to this world, man.
And where's baby Jesus in this if we're talking about Christmas? I mean, let's be honest here.
This is a pretty secular universe. We don't get a lot of Christian image
that's true.
in the Christmas movie. So I'm going to say the Christ figure does not exist, and instead our religious and belief system structures in this universe surround the figures we see, the legendary figures.
Yeah. Okay.
So Jack Frost.
Fuck that guy. So he actually succeeds in his plan to get Santa to renounce his Santa-ship, essentially. He kind of manipulates him into holding the globe that he got from following Lucy and Santa into the Hall of Snow Globes. Is that what, if I remember correctly, that's what it's called?
I don't remember what it's called, but that sounds right.
I think it's the Hall of Snow Globes, which it's just, I find it very funny, like what they put emphasis on as in terms of like, important objects. Snow globes apparently is the important totem here.
So the new MacGuffin introduced in the universe. The thing that when you become a Santa, it's like your contract, basically. So it holds and it's magical. So even after you die, it just hangs around and floats in a museum. Yeah,
it's kind of cool. I actually like the aesthetic of it when they walk in. So Frost finds the snow globe that he's looking for, and he gives it to Santa Claus as a present after basically ruining their family's time. Like, he manipulates everything to cause conflict between Scott and his in-laws, making it really difficult for him to focus on everything that's going on at the North Pole. And so at that time, he's feeling very frustrated, and Frost knows it. So he gets him to admit that there are times that he wishes he was never Santa Claus at all while holding the snow globe. And they go back in time to kill Santa again.
I know.
This poor guy.
It's super morbid. Santa dies 3 times if you count them all in this series, and twice in this movie. It's pretty rough for that guy.
And who knows about Mrs. Claus?
Again,
I know. An unanswered question that we need answers to. What did the elves do with her? I'm looking squarely at the elves because they're the ones who acted like everything was all hunky-dory and ready to go once Scott Calvin got there again.
It also throws, it's not a retcon, but it is a weird wrench to throw in this universe now, which is time travel. Because in the synopsis you read, it's referred to as like a different dimension, I think. But it's actually not. I think it says like literally in the thing, the escape clause, that it's to go back in time and, choose a different path in that moment or whatever. I'm obviously, paraphrasing what the clause is, but it's something to the effect that, so if there's time travel in this, couldn't it just like Father Time help him out with this and help, or does Father Time not work like that? Does he not control the timeline? What is Father Time's purpose among the legendary characters?
Well, we'll find out in Disney Plus's upcoming series.
I hope
Santa Claus, Father Time.
Yeah. Who's going to play the young Peter Boyle? We need somebody who's lost all of their hair.
Larry David.
Graying. Larry David. Yes. Jewish Larry David is going to play Father Time in the universe that's strictly tied to Santa Claus. It's perfect. Bernard's Jewish, so it makes sense.
Well, that's pretty
I feel like
pretty fucked.
Tom Hiddleston could fill that role nicely.
Who?
Yeah.
Tom Hiddleston.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Let's shave his fucking head. Let's do it.
I feel like Tom Hiddleston is thrown around as like a young many people.
That's what all I'm doing right now. Yeah. Is I'm throwing up.
Classic IMDb fan casting where it's like, hey, he kind of looks like the person that I want him to be. Don't know about his acting skills, but let's cast him.
Either that or Sebastian Stan, one of those guys.
Right.
Yeah. Don't listen to us.
So yeah, you're right, Andy. They do go back in time, basically with the opportunity to change the timeline. So if I guess the point being, like, if Scott just went back by himself and said that, I guess he would technically have the opportunity to rethink it. Like, even if he said, I wish I wasn't Santa Claus at all, he could still go through with the scenario and become Santa Claus later on. But in this case,
he could kill Santa Claus again, take his coat again,
right? Yeah,
and then become Santa Claus again.
Yes, right. Repeat history.
He also gets to relive killing Santa Claus, which, if that's something that he likes to do and he wants to revisit, that might be fun for him.
I mean, it's happened a couple times in this movie so far. So, So in this case, though, Jack goes back with him and is able to subdue Scott Calvin and steal the jacket off of the disappeared, murdered Santa Claus.
But it happens differently this time, because in the first Santa Claus, it's when Scott comes out and shouts up to Santa, and then that startles him and he falls. In this one, it's Frost who does it. So he even changes the timeline.
Yeah, and was that on did he do that prior to Scott coming out? Is that why?
Yeah, I think so. Because when we get to the later scene when Scott reverses everything again and gives himself another chance, they're wrestling on the ground, and unfortunately, the past Scott Calvin comes out before that. So instead of him, that Scott Calvin getting the coat, he has to allow the Scott Calvin from the past to get it. So then that warps him back into his timeline, which is kind of fuzzy logic, but it's the Santa Claus.
I mean, we've got a lot of fuzzy logic here.
Yeah.
So once Jack puts on the jacket, they're both transported to, I guess, the alternate timeline, right? Which is, Scott is in modern day, but now the businessman he would have been had he not become Santa Claus in the first place. And then Jack has changed the North Pole for the worst into some hybrid encampment theme park with elf slaves
who are clearly not happy. They make a point to show you just how sad they are to be there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Definitely.
The elves are much happier making toys for no money, not collecting money for no money.
Yeah. Slave labor is
child slave labor.
Yeah,
and
right.
I think that's one of the things also that's off-putting to me is I'm seeing these children that are playing these beings that are supposed to be just totally happy with their existence of making toys for no compensation other than they get to live in this village with Santa.
I don't know. There seems to be commerce, though. So maybe they aren't slaves at all. Maybe it is literally no, they work there. They live there. It's their society.
They're just the serf class.
Yeah, they're just the working class. Maybe we don't get to see other parts. Maybe there's a bourgeoisie in the North Pole who don't work and they just live off the capital of the working elf. This is Republican Santa Claus.
No, I would imagine you're correct. I would imagine you're correct. Yeah,
there's definitely a capitalist system going on if Tim Allen is Santa Claus. Yeah, you're right. Well, yeah, either way, they're not happy about the situation, and it's a total shit show. And not only that, when we've got Scott Calvin, he's clearly not happy in his new old scenario of being the businessman who doesn't care about his family and immediately goes to find his family. So he goes to Charlie and his mom's house, knocks on the door. Charlie is clearly not happy to see him. And he's like, I just came to visit. And they're like, what for? You never visit. We never see you. What are you doing here? And Charlie looks like, I don't know. He's got a bad attitude, at least. I think they're implying that he's like some kind of delinquent type, outside of the fact that he was like spray painting shit with Christmas all over it in the last movie. He just seems to have a super bad attitude about everything. And then Laura is definitely not happy to see him, especially because now she is divorced from Neil, and he's asking where Neil is and all this stuff. And he's finding out everything in real time about what this alternate timeline situation is. So from there, he finds out that the North Pole is a resort, and luckily, because of that, it makes it very easy for him to get to the North Pole. He doesn't have to pull the strings that he did in the last movie with the Tooth Fairy. If it's accessible by regular people, then he can get there. So he presumably buys a ticket on the next flight out to the North Pole, gets a ticket to go inside, and he stumbles upon Neil and Lucy in there, and another person who's not happy to see him. And from there, he somehow, I don't know how, but he somehow convinces Lucy to help him out. Like,
hold on, we just glazed over a very important point here, which is Neil and his relationship. Somehow, Scott Calvin is such a bad dad that
that's right.
He ruined his relationship, but because he was such a poor father to Charlie, it ruined the relationship between Neil and what's her face.
Yep.
Laura. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because he had to pick up the slack from that, is what he was saying.
Right. Essentially, yeah, he didn't sign up for the pressure of being, both the dad and the stepdad, and covering for him.
Yeah.
And I really think they did a good job at illustrating, what could have been. And how different things would have been had Scott not necessarily become Santa Claus, but just had a change of heart in general, and changed his mindset from the bad sales dad to a family man, essentially.
Yeah, what happens if you don't put on the dead man's coat?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, he does convince Lucy to help him, essentially by saying, like, come on. Come on.
It's weird because in that moment where he meets up with Lucy and Neil at first, she like barely acknowledges him and like
doesn't even
essentially barely knows him. Like,
yeah.
She knows that it's Charlie's dad, and that's about it. So for her to be so off put by him then, and then for him to like just kind of beg her a couple of times, and then for her to be like, okay, I'll go in the behind the scenes area here and steal from Santa Claus. And I wish they did a little more with that. Like, maybe if there was some kind of like timeline breakthrough where like you can see it on her face, where like maybe she realizes he's Santa, kind of like a Mandela effect kind of thing. If they did that, and I know these movies aren't serious, but like even that for a kid's movie, I feel like they put in zero effort for that to really come to fruition.
All right, let me try to answer it canonically.
Let's hit it.
Lucy, at the end, we learn has a power. Oh, it's foreshadowed previously when Scott says that her hugs have the ability to warm him up. So maybe she is like legendary sensitive and knows, because of what you're saying, essentially, Ted, is like kind of this Mandela effect, the crossing of the timelines, if you will, is that she senses, and her legendary sensibility has now perceived him to be trustworthy, and she feels this urge. It's coming from like some force within her to act this way.
Once again, you blow my mind with your ability to connect the canon in this. It's truly amazing. Disney needs us to write the spin-off series.
Well, I mean, let's just. This is why.
Yeah.
You love
I can't
the sequel trilogy so much. you are able to just find connections whether they're there or not.
You wanted them there or not. Tell you about them.
Yep.
You got to dig deep, and boy, do you dig deep. Well done.
And this is exactly what they intended. So from there, Lucy is convinced to go get the snow globe. She goes and grabs it. Scott confronts Jack Frost, and he's obviously cognizant of what happened because they're both aware that they were in a timeline and things got reversed because they got warped back in time from the snow globe and the magic of that.
He's like, he goes, well, has it been 12 years already?
Yeah.
I've been expecting
By the
you.
way, like, as much as I think the work they do, like, practically with the makeup for Jack Frost is really good, it's really weird to see him with, like, the spiky beard.
yeah, I agree.
I don't know. It looks less like a beard and looks more like something dangling from him, like gross almost. It's kind of weird. More off-putting stuff in this series. But either way, he confronts him, they get into it, and right before he's going to have Scott taken away by the police or guards or whatever that are there, Lucy comes out with a snow globe, and Scott tells her to throw it to him. And as he planned, obviously Frost doesn't know this, Frost intercepts it and thinks that he's foiled the plan, and he's like, well, I have the snow globe in my hand, but you'll never get me to say what you want me to say. Kind of glossed over this earlier, but he actually records on a pen recorder kind of deal, Jack Frost saying those exact words that he wishes he was never Santa Claus. And he plays that back while he's holding the snow globe, and that triggers the time warp, and they go back in time to the moment again. But they're wrestling on the ground this time because Scott's ready for it, and he's holding them down, and he lets past Scott come out, do his thing, kill Santa, take his coat, become Santa, and then everything is righted, and they go back to the respective timeline that they're supposed to be in.
Can I just say that these clauses play it pretty loose in terms of what they're willing to accept as a trigger. He literally played a recording off of a cheap pen.
2004 recording pen.
Yeah, right. And somehow this snow globe accepts this trigger as Jack Frost saying that he doesn't want to be Santa at all.
That's magic, baby.
That's baseball, baby.
Glad you got that. You got to play it fast and loose in the Santa Claus universe. Otherwise, you don't have a Santa Claus universe.
Yeah, and they do. Anyway.
Yep. So, that reverses things. Scott makes up with his in-laws and Carol. He essentially says, we had a disagreement. We're going to have disagreements because we're family. We deal with it, we make up, and we're good to go. And that's like his realization that, like, as long as he doesn't put this pressure on himself and understands that he does need to make time for them, that everything will be okay. There will be disagreements. Everything won't be holly and jolly like it always was before, but it'll still be great, and they'll get through it as a family. So after that, Frost is... What is Frost doing at this point? I know he's like in front of everybody, but I don't really remember like what he's trying to do at this point.
Well, after they get back to the original timeline, so he basically gets arrested.
That's right, by the elf police.
And then they try to get him to unfreeze Lucy's parents. But he refuses to do so, and that's where Lucy uses her powers to hug Jack Frost, which warms his heart, thus ultimately unfreezing her parents.
Yeah, and unfreezing him. I think that was the caveat as well, is he can't unfreeze somebody unless he is unfrozen.
Yep.
So then he turns into super creepy looking dude with rosy ass cheeks. He looks like an elf at that point, I guess. He's got the pointy ears. Is that supposed to imply that maybe he was an elf before and went wicked?
He's just like an elf that got somehow glorified to be Jack Frost.
Yeah.
It's unclear at that point in time what the elfin mythology is within. But there could be like subspecies of, different types of elves.
Right.
We'll find out in the upcoming Santa Claus prequel, the Santa Claus, Jack before Frost.
I like that.
Right?
What cools his warm heart?
Whew, man. We're making money, boys.
Right.
We'll find out. Honestly, it does.
So is that
go in any direction?
Movie?
Huh?
Pretty much. Yeah. As far as the plot of this thing goes and all of that, breaking it down. Yeah.
Well, here's one last thing. One last thing about the plot. So, we didn't really talk about it too much, but there is also the secret of Santa Claus. Which is basically the reason why they had to disguise the North Pole as Canada when Carol's parents come up. But then at the end of the movie, they kind of just like freely are like, yeah, I guess there's no avoiding this now. Like, yeah, I'm Santa, you're at the North Pole.
Families don't have secrets.
Yeah, but
they have gossip.
Yeah, but it seems like they made it a pretty important thing to keep it from them to protect the sanctity of the North Pole, I guess. Like, I don't know what the repercussions were. I don't remember what the repercussions were, but
they said that it's because her parents couldn't keep secrets, so that was the only reason.
Oh, her parents in particular. Is that what it was? Okay, all right, I gotcha. I forgot exactly what. You're right.
I can relate to that. I've got family that you cannot tell anything to.
Yeah, me too. I'm married to it.
I was going to say that they're inextricably linked. So anyway. Well, let's get into some of the other stuff in this movie. So like, we talked a little bit about Jack Frost, but Martin Short, he plays it up. He hams it up this entire time. He's clearly having a good time in this movie. Kind of what I enjoy about these movies is like, you can tell Tim Allen really enjoys himself during these. Yeah. And especially with Martin Short in there, another like very just right in your face comedian, overacting comedian like that. Like he just really plays it up. And even though he's not my favorite person of all time, it really works as him as Jack Frost.
It's the perfect cast, really. I mean, like he's just like he fits these family movies so well. Because he's so over the top with everything. He's just this over dramatic person just in general. And I love it. It fit the Jack Frost character so well. And again, you can't have a Martin Short movie without a little Martin Short musical number. North Pole, instant classic.
Yeah.
Instant classic.
It's something.
I sing it around the holidays every year.
Do you now?
North Pole, North Pole. Yeah, it's the best.
Beautiful. Well, we've also got Bud Newman. That's Carol's father, who's introduced in this movie. And he's not super fond of Scott at the beginning, but obviously, like everybody in these movies, it seems like the moment they find out he's Santa Claus, they're like, oh, shit, I like this guy now. And
bad dude.
Yeah, and he calls himself Father Christmas-in-Law, I think, or Father-in-Law Christmas, which is just a cute little moment where he's like, yeah, I like that title. And then we get Carol's mother, Sylvia Newman, who pretty much just goes along with what he says and what he does. And really the only moment you see any character from her is when she's flirting with Jack Frost a lot, when they're sipping some what is it, chocachinos or whatever they're having.
Chocachinos.
So and I mentioned in here in my notes, Andy, you like to bring up whenever you think somebody's a bit of a cuck. And I saw like that kind of going on there where they're flirting together. Maybe Bud's a cuck, maybe he's okay with that kind of stuff. I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that.
I don't think so. No, not at all. He's definitely not a cuck. But he's so disengaged from his wife and kind of finds her annoying that in this moment, she is just like longing for the attention that Bud does not give her.
Yeah. Oh, well, really? You heard it first from our resident cuck expert, Andy.
Yeah. I identify the cucks and the simps in these franchises.
Oh, absolutely. See, I think after the movie, Bud and the parents went up to Jack Frost like, "Hey, what do you think about coming home with us tonight?"
Really?
Yeah, I think it's like like a throuple type situation at the end.
Yeah, just share my wife, not necessarily me in the corner, but yeah. I can see that.
That's not a cuck then.
No, you're right.
It's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not.
Don't know really what you'd call that. I guess swingers more than anything. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for the new characters introduced in here, right? Just the in-laws and Jack Frost.
Yeah, I think we got to wrap this movie up. I think that's
let's do it.
There's a joke about Democrats in this from Bud. So even like furthering this notion that this is a conservative-centric movie franchise, where it's something to the effect of like the people all like, they'd be Democrats or something like that, and then laughs it off.
That's a good catch. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. I definitely didn't pay as much attention to this one as I did the other ones. I kind of rushed through this one a little bit and just kind of jotted down the main points when I was watching it. But that's a good catch. Anything that you saw, Zach?
Red Bull, proud sponsor of the Santa Claus 3, the
Red
Escape
Deer,
Clause.
yeah. Yep, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Really weird that to be the... I thought they run on cocoa. Why do they need Red Bull?
It's 2005.
Maybe it's for the reindeer, though. It's Red Deer, right? So maybe it's for the reindeer.
Is that the purpose?
Red Bull gives you wings.
Oh,
help them fly.
Is that it?
I mean, think about that.
Is that the whole... Oh, my God. I think you're right. You're right. That makes sense.
Yeah. It just occurred to me, but I think that's got to be what it is, what they were playing off of.
Oh, that's, yeah. Yeah, I think Chet just had probably just too much Red Bull then, right? Is that...
Yeah,
Red Deer,
I think so.
I think that's
it probably leads to more reindeer farts.
Actually, this explains a lot. Good catch.
Yeah, I think we get this.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Man, I'm glad we brought that up.
We have expanded this universe more than anybody could ever ask for. Yeah, the only other thing that I caught, it's just like a thing that I don't like in movies. They reuse the footage from the beginning scene with the delivery.
Yeah.
I just don't like that in movies. I think it's cheap. I think it's lazy. Even in kids' movies, there's no reason they couldn't have reshot a new one, because like it's a little jarring to me. Like, Carol is not wearing the same stuff that she is when she starts that scene at the end of it with that whole sequence. It's not the same stuff that she's wearing at the beginning when they reuse that footage. So if they're going to do that, I think they need to commit to making all that kind of have some continuity to it.
Well, I feel like when that stuff happens in movies, a lot of times it's just like from editing, or like they change the storyboard, or they do that in post because they have to. For instance, in A New Hope, a lot of the story only came out of pure desperation. Like they took the only usable parts of the movie and crafted a story from it.
It's still convoluted.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of those types of things are due to that. Due to the editing, due to the post production. possibly a change in story, change in direction.
Yeah, well, we missed out on a lot of bigs, is all I'm saying, from A New Hope. Well, I think that wraps up this series, right?
Yeah, all right. Let's rank our Santa Claus movies, boys.
Absolutely.
Some other things to speculate. Or not speculate, but to talk about. Our toy and what was the other thing? What we think the Santa Claus 4 would be about. What's the clause?
That's right.
All right, let's start there. Let's start there. What is the Santa Claus? I mean, we've already pretty much built out this universe, so let's keep going. What does Santa Claus 4 look like? What is the clause that we see in the next movie?
Santa Claus 4, the prenup.
The prenup. wait, they got a prenup?
It's the prenuptial clause. So there's going to be some hot disagreement between Mr. and Mrs. Claus. And because this is 2020 or headed into 2021, where we're woke now, Mrs. Claus is going to take over the business of being Santa Claus, and she's going to become the Santa Claus.
Santa Claus is going to be stuck at home baking cookies, taking care of the elves. I gotcha.
Am I missing the prenup part? I don't get it.
It's something where it's one of those clauses in there that's already agreed upon, that if you do X, Y, or Z, that it's going to trigger this effect to go into place where the Mrs. Claus takes over.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the prenup wasn't necessarily mutually agreed upon, other than the fact that it's part of the Santa Claus contract.
Yep, just like all the other parts of it.
I see.
Yeah, it's like an extension off of the Mrs. Claus. I gotcha.
Yeah.
And of course, Curtis will probably bring it up at the worst moment because he's a fucking moron. God, I hate Curtis.
Curtis, now aged as a 30-year-old.
Oh my God! Yeah, he's got a goatee and piercings. Yeah.
Can we look up what he's on? We need to look up what this actor looks like today. And
you go for it.
All right, I'm on it.
I do want to know.
Up with what are your Santa Claus 4 clauses?
Do you have anything, Zach, or should I just freewheel it here?
I want you to hit it. I'm loving the stuff that's coming out of you right now, man.
The Santa Claus 4, the divorce clause, kind of going with the marriage stuff here. What happens if they're actually unhappy, if the honeymoon period is over and that not everything is holly and jolly anymore and they want to get a divorce? What happens there? So does Scott have to find a new wife from there before the next Christmas? What happens to Mrs. Claus? Does her memory get wiped? Does she become a new person? Does she retain all of her memories and she's Mrs. Claus, but she's going back into the real world? Somebody who's been hauled up in the North Pole for years. So many questions to answer there. Who gets the kids? There are more kids at this point. It's not just Buddy. It's Buddy and Guy and Friend. A shitty South Park joke going off the Canada thing.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of things to unpack, a lot of things to unravel, and also on top of that, what's going on with everybody else? What's going on with Charlie? What's his career? Is he an artist now? He seemed really good at spray painting from the 2 seconds you see of him finishing up a spray painting. What's he up to? What's Lucy doing now? Is she helping Scott at the North Pole? Who knows?
All right, I can dig it. Dig it.
Yeah, I know I asked more questions than anything, but just kind of setting up what could happen there. Because I don't know.
No doubt. I mean, we got to set the stage. I mean, that's the way to do it. By the way, Curtis, his name is Spencer Breslin, and he cannot play Curtis again.
Yeah, he's a little too punk now for.
Oh, I got to see this.
Yeah, he is not head elf. No
Spencer Breslin, is he related to Abigail Breslin?
Maybe.
because she's in 3 for a minute.
Yes. Yep. It's
I wonder if he helped his sister get her start. Yeah, he's got a weird mixture of baby face and adult face going on, and it doesn't look good.
Yeah, not elf
He's
material
somewhere in
for
between.
sure.
No,
Not elf material.
I would not want him working in my workshop.
All right, here's my pitch for the Santa Claus 4. It's called Santa Claus 4: The Widow.
Oh fuck!
Oh,
And here we see a dark turn on the Santa Claus universe where Mrs. Claus, the prior Mrs. Claus, before the murder of Santa Claus, comes back to take vengeance on the original Santa Claus. And she is like the Mrs. Claus we have never seen before. I mean, she's like Kill Bill Mrs. Claus. Like
Hell yeah.
We're gonna see Kill Bill as the Santa Claus essentially. That's my Santa Claus 4 pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's playing off a thread that we introduced earlier. I love it. Absolutely love it. What are the implications of that? That's amazing.
What is this rated?
It's gotta be PG-13. It's gotta be PG-13.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can make it PG. Like we could. I mean, if we want, like if we want to go all out Kill Bill style, gore, vulgarity, sexuality. I mean, we could make it that, but I think it would limit our audience. So we're gonna bring it down to PG-13. And
how about we rate it R and then do what Deadpool did and make a PG-13 version of it to release on Disney Plus?
Yep, definitely.
So you got an R version on Hulu, and you've got the PG-13 version for the kids to watch on Disney Plus. And you know, the kids still get one F word. You get one F word in a PG-13 movie.
And it's going to be right at the end when they say, Buck Scott Kelvin. And
Roll credits.
Roll credits. Yep.
Hell yeah. Setting up the sequel to that one.
So
The Widow 2.
The Widow 2. Oh, it's perfect. Yes. Guys, I love it.
I love it.
Guys.
All right. Do we want to get into rankings first, or do we want to get into past Christmas trauma?
I want to hear about Ted. I actually just want to hear about your previous Christmas experiences because you got me concerned.
Yeah. It shouldn't be concerning. It's fine. But, you know, I grew up in a household where, and I love my parents. I think they raised me very well. I have no actual complaints about how they raised me. But at the time, I was upset. I really was not allowed to have video games. They thought that I would become obsessed with them because they saw a couple times when I went to a friend's house or a cousin's house that I would play the video games nonstop when I was there. I personally think, looking back, that part of it might have been I might have gotten obsessed with them, but also we don't know if that's just because I didn't have it, and because it was there, I knew I had only few precious moments to use it, and therefore I would be clung to that thing for as long as I could use it. So piggybacking off of that, I really wanted an N64 when those were coming out.
And you didn't
really wanted it. No, I didn't, you know, and I would have settled for even a Game Boy. My big thing was Pokemon, man. That was my jam. I wanted Pokemon, but even more than that, I wanted Pokemon Stadium. I wanted Pokemon Snap. I wanted everything attached to Pokemon. And that was it. And I tried to convince my parents, you know, I only want these couple of games. I wouldn't ever ask for more than that. But it was always no. So I don't know if this was around Christmas or after, but I do have memory of me making a cardboard N64 with cardboard controllers and cardboard screen where I drew out scene from Pokemon Stadium, and I would pretend to play it.
That's classic. I mean, that's some early childhood stuff, man. I'd done that before.
Yeah. And apparently my parents didn't feel anything from that. So
damn,
it still didn't get you the N64. Yeah, we can take this offline if you want to.
Oh no, No, I'm perfectly fine with this. No, it's really not a big deal. And honestly, like I think you guys know, I'm not the biggest gamer to this day. Like last game I played was Fallen Order. Like outside of my usual, I play Madden regularly, but that's about it. Not a huge gamer, so I don't know if it's nature or nurture effect there with that, but I don't really look at it negatively. It's just funny to look back on and be like, that was kind of sad that I made a cardboard thing and pretended to play the video game. Like it was imaginative, but it was sad.
That's not that sad. Like I said, I've done that before with stuff that I wanted I couldn't have.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
You guys got any?
I've got one. This one really got to me when I was a kid. I wanted so badly, so badly, from Power Rangers, the White Power Ranger sword. White Power Ranger was my favorite. I was super into him. I wanted that.
He was the Tiger Zord, right?
Yeah, Green Ranger turned into the tiger.
The saber-toothed tiger?
Yeah, saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
He was my absolute favorite, and I wanted it so badly for Christmas. And I remember seeing it in the store Ames. Do you guys remember that store?
I remember Ames, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ames, okay, right? And Mom wanted to get it for me, and I wanted for Christmas so bad. Never got it. But that same year, Burger King had come out with like a set of toys for the Power Ranger movie, one of which was like a little dagger version of it. So I had the dagger toy, and believe it when I tell you guys that I played with that dagger for many hours as a child because I thought it was the fucking coolest thing, and it was the only sword that I had. So instead of having the actual sword, I had a Burger King dagger.
Well, wasn't the dagger what they like he pulled out to like play the flute to trigger his Zord?
Oh yeah.
So you got the good. That's a good one.
Yeah, but I didn't have the actual sword. I wanted the fucking sword.
Well, I think we're crossing streams a little bit because I remember Power Rangers. So Tommy was both. I don't know why I remember this shit. But he was both the Green Ranger and the White Ranger. But
and red
when he was
too,
the Green
right?
Ranger, it was a little dagger that he played to get the dragon, the green dragon.
You're right.
And then when it was, I don't know if he played the white, or not dagger, but sword. But it was more of a sword than anything. It was longer, and I remember it like on the end of the hilt, it had a tiger head on it.
So I want it. I might buy it right now, guys. This is not good. This is not good.
You've already made that mistake with another sword item.
I don't care. I need it.
It's different. It's a laser sword.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Power Rangers were big back then, man. I got a bunch of
that was my jam back in the day.
Yeah,
you got anything, or was your childhood perfect?
I mean, I'm not going to say my childhood was perfect, but I don't really have any like bad Christmas memories. Like my parents always kind of made sure that we had like a good holiday. Like Christmas was always very special. And it's interesting because growing up, we didn't get anything like throughout the year. Like it was like if we got toys, it was birthday and Christmas. Like that's when we got new stuff. And so they actually did they made it a point to make sure that we did get the things that we wanted on Christmas and birthdays, because we didn't really get anything outside of that, which it makes perfect sense as a parent now.
Yeah,
especially with what we have going on in our basement right now.
Oh, what are you talking about?
I know how easily the toy collection can get out of control.
Oh man!
So I get the logic, but no, I mean, I remember there was one Christmas when I asked for a boombox. So I mean, we're getting way back,
Hell yeah, with a tape player
in the mid 90s. Needed the boombox with a tape player so I can play my Backstreet Boys tape.
Fuck yeah!
and I was like, I asked for a boombox weeks leading up to Christmas, like I need a boombox, and I was convinced that I was not going to get a boombox. And I opened a boombox on Christmas morning, and I remember saying to my mom, I said, I know that Santa is real because you never would have got me a boombox.
Wow.
Oh man. That's amazing.
And
I love that.
And I think she took that shit personally.
Yeah. That just made me think too, like going back to this movie, if at any point your parents were like trying to wean you off of the Santa idea, the fact that they might have reaffirmed it by getting you something that you thought they would never get you is amazing to me. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, I want to return this thing immediately. Yeah.
That's funny.
That's
so yeah,
funny.
I didn't have any bad experiences, but I guess my parents did. They really got shat on. Oh yeah. God, man, Christmas memories.
Let's fucking rank these things and get out of here.
Rank them and get out of here.
Let's do it. Ted, you start.
All right. I got 1, I got 3, and I got 2. 1's a classic. It's got the best jokes. It's got the best version of Tim Allen. Can't beat that. Logic aside, and there's no logic in these movies whatsoever. I love 1. It was a toss-up between 3 and 2. So for me, where 3 really got me was the thread that they introduced that they could reverse everything. And like it showed Scott the consequences of falling back into the old habits that he had, and that, he could ruin things. But the only thing that would ruin anything with his family right now was him over worrying about that and overworking himself. And then 2, like, is a really fun movie, but I think Creepy Santa, the Toy Santa, really just lowers it a bit for me. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
I feel you. I think that 2 is tough because of the plastic Santa, but my ranking would go 1, 2, 3. Those are like kind of in order. Those are my favorite. Yeah. The number 1 is just so nostalgic for me, and to your point, has the best version of Tim Allen in it. And that's what I really like about it. Like half the movie is just Tim Allen being a smartass, kind of growing into his role as Santa Claus, and it really resonates with me as the grumpy father I am today. Number 2 and 3, I can see where you would kind of switch those up, but number 2 still has that nostalgic factor for me. I was still pretty young when that came out, and I watched it unironically. So I think number 2 just kind of had my interest at that time, and plus I liked the it still had that kind of early 2000s like aesthetic to it, and again, it's really all nostalgia from that movie, but totally understand Plastic Santa is rough. That is a creepy ass Santa. And then number 3, I didn't really like the storyline. There's not much redeeming for number 3 for me. It came out at a time I wasn't interested anymore. It feels like they're milking the franchise. So it was fine, and as a end to the trilogy, being what it is, it worked. It was fine, but it wasn't my favorite.
My rankings are going to be the same, 1, 2, 3 in that order, with really like 2 and 3 being movies we didn't need. We could have had the Santa Claus, and it would have been a nice single one-off Christmas story, but we wouldn't be doing a podcast without 2 and 3. So I'd say like kudos to Disney for making that happen and having people enjoy them like Zach, you did, somewhat during childhood and later on too. But can't really say I love this franchise either. So even though like I'm ranking them that way, these aren't my favorite Christmas movies to watch. So can't say I'm a fan.
That's fair. They're no Home Alone.
Yeah, not a classic.
No.
Let's talk about our next project or next episode. What's homework for next time?
For next time, anybody listening, if you want to watch along, we're going to watch the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. So that's Spider-Man's 1, 2, and 3, starring Tobey Maguire. You've got Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson. I mean, these are movies that really kind of helped launch the current resurgence of superhero movies that we have today with the MCU and the DCEU and everything. So, I'm definitely excited to revisit those because I have fond memories of the first two, and I know 3's kind of a mess, but maybe it's not as bad as I remember. So I'd be excited to check that out. What do you guys think?
This is one of my favorite Spider-Man iterations from anything, really, between animation and live action movies. I'm excited about it. I love the Sam Raimi series, so it should be a lot of fun.
I think it's appropriate too for some speculation as the Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man, the next one that comes out, might be bringing in elements from these other Spider-Verses. So I think it's a good trilogy to tap into for our speculative minds.
Yeah, that's true. Haven't they confirmed or all but confirmed that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield from the next Spider-Man reboot are gonna be in this next one?
I've seen stuff about that, but I don't know if has it actually been confirmed?
I think it's just
maybe not officially
casting reports. So I don't know if it's been a Hollywood Reporter story. That means it's pretty much confirmed. But
yeah, it's like
I don't know
Variety or Hollywood Reporter. But
yeah, well,
we'll find out. We'll dig into it and report back for on next episode.
And get into it.
Absolutely. Well, everybody have a happy holiday, whatever you're celebrating. I'm going to be celebrating
Life Day.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, find us on most podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter @FranchiseFlix for new episodes and other content. You can follow Andy on Twitch and Instagram @Darth Buckman, and follow Zach on Twitter @_Zach Russo. Talk to you next time.
Da, 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 da.
Oh, good. Here we go.
That's the outro.
Perfect.